What's going on? This is Unpacked, presented by the To Be Fair Show and
the G Shit Podcast.
We're back. This is episode 4. It's gonna be a fun one. I think this is a fun one. This is a couple episodes in the making. But before we get too deep into like even the conversation and where we're gonna go, love for the panel to kind of introduce themselves. There's a lot of familiar faces, been on here multiple times. We'll start with G and then we'll go clockwise.
What's good, y'all? It's G from the G Shit Podcast. Make sure you follow on all platforms at GSHPOD. Ha.
Trey.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Big salute, FBA salute to the B1 family and everyone like that, and also the rest of the diaspora that's on code and everything like that. I appreciate you having me out here. And be looking forward to a good discussion.
Alex.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Alex, aka I don't know. You can catch me on GitHub.
GitHub? What is that?
GitHub, man. Pushing that code.
Oh, my bad. Okay, I'm there now. I got you. M Black, or is it A Black? My bad. I can't.
M Red.
M Red.
Hey, man, got my name back. We reclaimed it.
Okay.
Yeah, A Black TV. Glad to be here again and looking forward to the discourse.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go ahead, Johnny.
And it's your boy Johnny P. Glad to be back. Very, I'm excited for this one. Like you said, this one's been building. So, looking forward to, very fruitful discussion and, hope to get some insight from the conversation.
Gotcha. So this is again. This has been a much awaited episode. It is the Black divide, the diaspora divide. Could kind of break down into Pan Africanism versus FBA. It could be, just kind of picking the brains and seeing exactly where and what and why the divide within the diaspora is. This one got a lot of branches, so we're gonna kind of let the conversation flow a little bit and see where it takes us. But before then, we had a meme sent in it. Again, this is a branch of the To Be Fair Show, so we like to start off a little lighthearted. Meme sent in from my boy A Black.
Continue to be unafraid of this, man.
Yeah, I'd like to say something right here. Cassius Clay, yes.
Why do you want to say Cassius Clay when Howard Cosell and everybody is calling you Muhammad Ali? Now, why you got to be the one of all people whose color to keep saying Cassius Clay?
Howard Cosell is not the one who's going to fight you. I am.
You're making it really hard on yourself now. Why don't you keep the thing in the sport angle? Why don't you call me my name, man?
Well, what's your name? You told me your name was Cassius Clay a few years ago.
I never told you my name was Cassius Clay. My name is Muhammad Ali, and you will announce it right there in the center of that ring after the fight if you don't do it now.
For the benefit of this broadcast, him. All right?
You acting just like an old Uncle Tom. Another Floyd Patterson. I'm going to punish you.
You ain't got no
back off of me.
Don't call me no Uncle Tom.
That's what you are, Uncle Tom.
Why are you going to call me Uncle Tom? I ain't do nothing.
You heard me. Just back off of me.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, as the two contestants prepare for battle right now,
back off of me, man. Back off of me, man.
Another interview has been recorded for posterity as the two gentlemen continue to promote the fight.
My favorite part of that clip is the fact that Howard Cosell continues to try to conduct like the interview as they're still brawling. I don't know how y'all feel about that.
Yeah, man. When I said that, I just thought about Trey. I thought it would be a great way to open this up.
Okay.
Nomenclature. The like you said, the divide and the whole divide and conquer is not new. None of these factions are really new. What's new is the internet and Twitter and different personalities kind of getting behind different things for their benefit. But these ideologies aren't new, but the whole thing of dividing us, mislabeling us, that part is being magnified to a new level, and really it's like you're kind of talking in circles. So I don't want to get too deep in what I gotta say because I know you have some leading questions, but it was kind of even just researching this whole topic was disheartening. Kind of
Yeah.
seeing nothing but, for lack of a better word, niggas arguing,
Mm.
and not coming for nothing. These are not no movements.
Uh-huh.
There's nothing positive. There's nothing progressive that have come out of these movements. And when I look at so-called movements, I look at their leaders. I look at people following charlatans like Tariq Nasheed, someone who started as a pimp, as a con, as a hustler, manipulating women, manipulating weak men to get women, who stepped into the woke game, who made his big boost of fame with Hidden Colors, documentary series, which totally contradicts all of his FBA rhetoric. I see somebody who got with ADSO, Yvette Carnell, and they're both mutual benefit in the beginning because she was relatively unknown, used him for his platform, he used her for a bag, and then they became fighting too. So it's just all a bunch of kind of ridiculousness going around. But when anybody is following Tariq Nasheed, I know they're not serious. Serious people can't have serious politics. That dude is always about a bag. Okay, let me start FBA. Let me trademark it. Let me create flags and logos and T-shirts. Let me do speaking engagements around. This is a new bag for him. He's always been an opportunist in the conscious world, if you want to call it consciousness. But an African country right now can give him a bag, and he'll spin his whole narrative if it's enough money for him. So I don't trust him. I don't trust people that can't see through him, and can't see through people who intentionally set division, who are not serious, who troll people who are trying to do the work, who he's sitting there, he going at a vet, he talking about her looks and how big her head is, and just this stupid coon shit. At the end of the day, a lot of the people that Tariq built Hidden Colors off of has distanced themselves from him. He likes to kind of liken himself to Dr. Claude Alexander, who's kind of also distanced himself from him. But ADOS and FBA, they were together at one point, and what was happening was people were confusing the terminology. Is this African descendants of slavery? Is it American descendants of slavery? And it wasn't until Ann Coulter jumped on board that Tariq went on and kind of separated, created the FBA thing, the Foundation of Black Americans, to separate it from African, from the whole African thing in general, so there's no confusion. Now, I agree, and I'm gonna wrap up. I agree with a lot of the foundational things of ADOS. That we need our reparations, we need cash payments. Like I think there's a lot of positive work that is being done in that organization. I think it got conflated with internet trolls who are part of this whole Black identity crisis of who are we? We don't know ourselves, and a lot of that is uh, inflated with self-hate. And then you see this xenophobia coming in with hating of Africans, hating of African immigrants, hating of Caribbeans, and it has nothing to do with the overall goal of freedom, the overall goal of redemption and retribution from what was lost from us. You just see people finding new ways to hate Africans, to hate themselves. It's kind of like if you look at feminism. Feminism had prominent tenets in the beginning, equality for women, and then the internet came along, and then a lot of women hopped on, and it became a new intellectual way for them to hate men. And you see that with these organizations, with FBA and these people who already had this deep-seated hate from Africans. Why? Because it's weaponized ignorance. They've never been to Africa. They don't know anything about real Africans. Most of them don't have 5 Africans in their phone they can call right now, but they are spewing white supremacy tropes the same way that white people speak them against them. Oh, he said earlier, oh, they Jamaicans and Haitians, they commit the crimes. That's what white people say about y'all. You know, you using white supremacist language to.
Hey black, not to cut you off. I can tell you got a full clip loaded.
Yeah, I'm just getting started. Go ahead.
Yeah. Now I see you was still even ramping up. I feel it. I guess this is probably a good space to allow everybody to give like their opening introductive just commentary or thoughts on what the root of the black divide within the diaspora is. I'll start with you, Trey.
What's up? I guess I'll start off by saying my goal is to, I guess, serve as like a diplomat for FBAs and be as diplomatic as possible, and then try to bridge the gap. And I have absolutely no desire to offend the so-called diaspora by reacting. But if I react to hostility, then it's kind of like saying like don't start, no one won't be none. So like that's kind of it is what it is. And can I first off define FBA? Like FBA. Before I do that, I have to define ethnogenesis and delineation. An ethnogenesis is when a group becomes a new ethnicity after separating from a common ancestor and remains separate for centuries and generations and builds a new separate culture distinct from any supposed roots. Delineation is marking the edge of something. In this case, it's a lineage. So this is the result of ethnogenesis, the natural result. So the need for the delineation movement gained traction during the reparations discussion because FBAs have a very specific and very legitimate grievance to address with our government due to centuries of crimes targeting FBA specifically. FBA is a lineage just like Haitian, Jamaican, Dahomey, Irish, Spanish, Chinese, Japanese, Arawak, Anglo, whatever. It is a delineation within a so-called diaspora and includes all Black Africans who can trace their roots to the ethnogenesis in America back to the Black American freedmen in the 1860 census after our emancipation. So it's not really a group or a movement. It's just a lineage. That's all it is, and we need that for our reparation claim. So that's the main thing I just want to get out there as far as what FBA is. Just want to clarify all that. All the other riffraff on the side, I don't condone people that go out of their way to disparage Africans because I have African friends that on both sides. Some of them are poor representatives. They let white people say the N-word in front of them. I have some of them that are writers that are always talking about things that we need to do to get better, and they know about Patrice Lumumba and the movements and everything like that. So, I mean, I would never say all Africans or talk about all Africans. When people say things like that, it kind of puts us on the defensive, like, I'll go into more detail on these topics later on, but that's my introduction to the topic.
Okay, gotcha. G, what do you think the root cause of the divide within the Black diaspora is? We can't hear you.
It's really tough to pinpoint, man. One, I gotta shout out Muhammad Ali is my favorite. I hear echo Black person of all time. But aside from that, when we talk about what's separating us, honestly, man, I don't know, but I feel like it's not just where Black people are from. I feel like religion also has a big piece into why we can't get on the same page too. And it's like even within one single church, you see so many tribes of people who don't get along, right? So it's like I just feel like in our community, we haven't been able to establish a common ground to all get behind. And I don't know what that is or why. You know what I mean? So I think it's multiple reasons, but I feel like religion is a huge one. Does anybody else hear that, or am I tripping?
Yeah, it's an echo. I think somebody probably has the show playing as they're listening to it. That might be the issue. I'm not sure. If you have the show playing while you're listening, mute your mic while you're listening. Alex.
Now I hear the echo. I think the main thing that man, this is distracting. Can y'all mute your mics?
I can't hear the echo though.
It might be your mic.
Let's see. No, I don't hear it anymore.
I don't hear anymore either.
Hold on. I'll just ride with this. I think the main thing that I think is the divide between the black community is just lack of knowing your history, a lack of understanding the diaspora, and pretty much our story. I think that there is a nuance that kind of gets missed during these conversations, and I hope to provide some. I think I did a lot of research, not only into like the ADOS, FBA movement, the Continental African movement. Well, not movement, but mostly my own lineage and heritage, and I think that like I have a pretty compelling story as to why like the divide isn't necessary, why there isn't a good reason to have any animosity towards each other. So hopefully during the conversation I can shed some light. But I think a lot of the one thing I want to do tonight, I just want to mostly listen and ask questions and get a better understanding because I think when I was researching, I came across there was like a brother in California named Chad, and he's like a leader of like a ADOS chapter, and he said that the criteria for being considered ADOS is you have to be identified. You have to identify as an African American for at least 12 years, and you have to be able to trace your what's it called? Oh, yeah, your lineage back to American chattel slavery. So to me, that's some pretty simple criteria, and I'm not necessarily sure why, for something that simple, there has to be like a xenophobia that kind of disperses from it. And I don't want to blame that on the whole movement. I think Trey did a really good job of, setting the tone for tonight of saying like, hey, like I'm not here to do that, and neither am I. I'm really interested to see where this conversation goes because I think through talking and understanding this nuance, I think we'll be able to better understand what we're ultimately trying to achieve. And for me, I look up to someone like Fred Hampton because I think he had the best answer. Like regardless of color, regardless of ethnicity, I think we all need to unite simply to provide a better and more equitable world for everybody. So white people, Hispanic people, anybody. That's pretty much where I'm coming from. So yeah, that's all I got.
Johnny.
Yeah, I'll just say like I think the divide is programmed in us. I think a lot of it has to do. I mean, both systems are dealing. You have colonialism going on in a lot of the African and a lot of the diaspora. Us in America, we're dealing with like the white supremacy. So there's a difference in the systems we're dealing with. I think it's a lot of lack of infrastructure and our lack of progress in the power systems here has a lot to do with that and our being able to be manipulated also. So like I said, I want to hear the conversation and gain insight on it for sure, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay, so we're gonna do one more reaction before we again dive into the conversation. Trace he sent his own Muhammad Ali clip. I feel it's fair to play it. G.
Medal at the Rome Olympics. Okay. Then apparently a few months later you stood on a bridge on the Ohio River and threw it away. Could you tell me why you did that?
Well, I always had some mystical idea that if I could become a big black man in the southern city or one of prestige or wealth, I could be treated different, or maybe I could have powers to open doors. At the time, it's much better now, but at the time in 1958, we couldn't eat in the restaurants in Louisville. We couldn't eat downtown. One day I saw two Africans go in with their robes and their turbans. They couldn't speak English. I heard the man say, "Let them in, they're not Negroes." I said, something's wrong. I can't say it's because I'm black, because they're so black and they're blue, but they went in. So I said, well, I get my Olympic gold medal, then I'll go in. I went and got my gold medal, went back in, ordered 2 cheeseburgers, and they said, sorry, we don't serve Negroes. I said, I don't eat them either, just give me 2 cheeseburgers. And she said, you getting smart. She called the manager and he said something about, I don't care who he is. She said, Cassius Clay, I don't care who he is. Anyway, the motorcycle gang came in and we had this fight, you read it. And But I couldn't. The idea was I couldn't eat there, so I got so angry. I drove Dutch to the Ohio River and stood there and looked at the gold medal, and I could imagine that American flag waving when they played the national anthem when I beat the Pole or the Russian. Dun 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 dun. And I'm standing at the medal on. Dun 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 dun. I said, boy, I'm going back to Louisville and I can eat now. I can go in the restaurants, put them on the spot. They can't put me out there. I'm the champ of the world. I'm in a big country like Rome, representing the United States, one little city named Louisville, and now I done beat the whole world. Boy, dun dun. They put me out of that restaurant. I said, this medal ain't worth a damn. I become so frustrated. Now I wish I still had it because I wouldn't become as frustrated now. But at the time, I took that medal and said, it ain't worth nothing. I don't care. I took it off my neck, said, it ain't no good. It ain't. Throw it in the Ohio River.
All right, and before we go to the conversation, I think this leads into this one right here. So I'm gonna play this, and then we'll kind of start the conversation.
Americans, should we delineate ourselves from the rest of the diaspora? Is it important for us to unite with the rest of the diaspora, or is it more important for us to separate ourselves or take the time out and build on ourselves? Do we need to kumbaya and come together and show that we're more alike than we are different? Or do we need to really make it clear that we are different? What y'all think about that?
Hello. What are you doing? Oh, fuck.
Don't mind that. All right, fellas. I'll toss it into the air. Whoever wants to take it.
I guess I'll jump in real quick just to clarify. I picked that meme or the video with Muhammad Ali just to show that, like I was saying before, we have a separate and distinct beef with the government. We've been fighting him, fighting for civil rights and everything. Even the immigration bill that allows people from the diaspora to come over here, and this is about the American soil and what Black Americans represent here. So we like that's why I think they're weaponizing immigration as they always have. Even after emancipation, they brought in a bunch of people from Europe because they didn't want Black people to have those jobs. And if and Black Americans, we've been kind of been rebel rousers like the whole time, starting movements, starting the Black Panther movement, everything else. Even after the George Floyd protests, those protests went all around the world. So I think we present a specific like threat to the government. Even Eisenhower said that his goal was to prevent the rise of a Black Messiah. That's why they killed Fred Hampton, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Patrice Lumumba in Africa, but in America, Medgar Evers. The list goes on and on. We could say so. Recently, what they said, I have a stat here that said African-born Black immigrants stand out for the recentness of their arrival in the U.S. 3/4 arrived in the country in 2000 or later, with 4 in 10, 43%, having arrived from 2010 to 2019 alone. Fewer than 2 in 10, 16%, arrived between 1990 and 1999. And just 10% arrived in the U.S. prior to 1980. So that's why this discussion has happened. It's not just because we just decided to pick a fight. There's an influx of people that receive priority. I have another video I sent later where it talks about Shirley Chisholm saying how they were prioritized as Caribbeans to get housing over Black Americans. So I don't think Africans necessarily know that they're being weaponized against us from people from the diaspora. So I'm not saying I'll blame them, but we have to understand that we have been in battle with these people since the beginning. So from our mindset, we know what's up. Those of us that are hip to it try to speak on we aren't just one big Negro, one big global Negro. We're a specific group. So,
and so I guess piggybacking and going to the second clip a little bit, I'll pose the question to y'all. Do y'all think that it is important for Blacks at this time to specifically work on themselves just because of Blacks in America have had its own individual struggle? That kind of goes to the notion of what Muhammad Ali inside that clip was speaking about where the African could get in, but he couldn't get in. And from just a little bit of looking at that I've seen of both sides of the coin, it seems that there tends to be a little bit resentment on like the FBA side of the game when it comes down to like they feel it's been one way where it's like American blacks reaching out for to help Africans, but it's not been reciprocated. Do y'all think that it would do black people good just to take some time, whatever it looks like, whether it's not under the FBA umbrella or if it is under the FBA umbrella, to take some time to individually as just a collective of like the foundational black like the people that went through slavery and that are descendants of it, to focus specifically on themselves?
Can I answer that?
Go ahead, Johnny.
Okay, can I give a perspective? I think yeah, like we definitely like owe it to ourselves because like ain't nobody else gonna do it. Like we can't expect them to kind of come over from over there fighting the struggles they're fighting against colonialism and help us also. It's like if anybody's gonna do it, it has to be us, and that's the only way we're gonna really feel like comfortable with any gains or any progress we make is if we do it. Any other way, it's gonna have conditions that we're not gonna be probably comfortable with. So I think a lot of that probably goes with the reason why we don't trust them as much is like the lack of progress we've made here and kind of some of the regression that we've seen over the last generation.
And Johnny, I guess the follow-up question to that always would be, do you not think that we'll be stronger united as like a full diaspora and more can get done as a diaspora?
But I mean, I do, but then that's why I'm kind of on the fence, and I want to hear more of the discussion because I can definitely understand how like uniting the diaspora has its benefits. It's pros and cons to everything, but it's the stuff that happened to us here, is what makes me lean that direction. But I'm open. Like I just want to hear the discussion a little bit more, and then maybe I can,
I'll
figure out where
go
I'm
Alex, then A Black. We do got a comment. It said, yes, focus on ourselves since nobody is trying to help us. Interesting perspective. Alex?
Okay, let me see. All right, no echo this time. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I just want to address a few things. Trey said earlier that African Americans are essentially black immigrants are pretty much being used as pawns. And I guess I want to know what does that mean in particular, because to me it runs the risk of just being anecdote at best and being trivial at worst. Because like there are real world consequences to American imperialism, such as the Banana Wars, where American troops, like right at the end of like slavery throughout the entire New World, where American troops went in and pretty much like decimated Haiti, Cuba, Nicaragua, all these black settlements outside of America. And it's not like they did that by themselves. Same thing with the Spanish American War, where the Buffalo Soldiers pretty much were instruments of American imperialism going in. And in addition to that, also when you think like talking about like just like the American Civil War, like black people fought on both sides. So is it like when is the cutoff for when black people pretty much were pawns for white supremacy and the institutions of the hegemony and like I guess non-combatants, I guess. Um the reason why I'm saying that is as someone who is of I would honestly say North American descent, as far as my African lineage, I don't really have any like dog in the fight. I'm just saying like I really want to know like how are Black Americans being used as pawns when pretty much like since the institution of slavery, we have been integral to not only the formation of building this country while we were in the Caribbean, we also were integral to ending slavery and participating in multiple civil rights movements throughout the years. You don't have a Malcolm X without West Indian heritage. You don't have people like Kwame Kwame Brown. Not Kwame Brown.
Not
Stokely.
Kwame.
No, my bad. Stokely Carmichael. Without West Indian involvement. It's just, I guess that's why I want to know. For me, growing up, I grew up predominantly in South Carolina, predominantly in Puerto Rico, in St. Thomas, and I have always been taught that there has never been I can kind of understand where there might be a need to distinguish yourself from a continental African because the story is different. But if you understand how African slavery happened on this continent, and I think people forget that the Caribbean is a part of North America, it's kind of disheartening to understand that why is there such a need for distinguishing when literally it's I don't know. I think black people think of slavery in North America like a Fortnite server. Hey man, I'm in this server getting my shoot on, and y'all in that server. No, it was all one thing. For example, George Washington, the first president of the United States of America, he had slaves here and he had slaves in Barbados. And why is that important? The money that was generated, the labor that was stolen, the people that were enslaved and put in bondage helped to pretty much fund and for a lack of a better word, you wouldn't have slavery in Virginia and South Carolina if it wasn't for the experiment that was so successful in Barbados as far as cash crops go. And just to address one more point, nobody is over here helping us. That's one thing I want to know. I think that our histories as Caribbean Americans, as Black Americans, for lack of a better term, I think the most apt way to call us is African Americans. It's been intertwined since the beginning of our pretty much bondage and capture over here. So I would like to know how we're not helping, how we haven't been a part of the story. But that's all I got.
A Black. Then he did address Trey, then Johnny.
Yeah, man. Alex was hitting us on the head. This whole first off, of course, we need to do for self. That's the obvious. But why not be as powerful as you can? To say the diaspora is so-called is ridiculous. These movements, they're so-called. We are all of that. And the most powerful Black movements in history have all had international relations. That's what made them powerful. They've all had immigrants almost that led them. Let's start with the UNIA with Marcus Garvey, Jamaican-born immigrant, who had international relations. Civil rights movement, they were going international, and people were being inspired by this movement across the world. The Nation of Islam, Farrakhan, West Indian, the Black Panthers doing international foreign policy. To not have unity and to think that we're going to do it by ourselves, only Black Americans who own 1% of the land here, who are economically still defunct on the same levels that we were in the 50s, as we were in Reconstruction, is crazy. Why do you want to be by yourself? Why do you want your lineage to just start at slavery? Our history didn't start at slavery. Slavery just shifted our history, And then when you talk about lineage, what are you going to do when all these white people come in and say, my great-great-great-grandmama was a slave? How are you going to determine or tell them that they can't connect back to their lands when they can't trace themselves back, or they can identify for 12 years as African American? When you want to start identifying yourself, we live in a country where a man can identify as a fucking woman. So what's stopping them from identifying as African American when you're talking about lineage? But what would stop it was unifying with the rest of the diaspora, saying that they don't help us is crazy. There's been historical documentation of people helping us. You got the CARICOM, they're doing Caribbean reparations. You got Abuja proclamation doing African reparation. Why wouldn't we be unifying with these groups, figuring out how we can leverage each other? Because we all have the same common enemy. We just had British slave masters. Some had Portuguese, some had Spanish, some had French, but we all had the same enemy, and we all want our shit back. And we're all suffering from different forms of conditioning, whether it's psychological slavery in America, whether it's colonialism in Africa or Brazil, you know, and yeah, I'll stop right there because somebody asked a question and that lead me on another rant.
I got you. I'm gonna read a couple of the comments and then I'm gonna go to Trey's video before I throw to Trey. Sharon Young, she said, I believe that we need to work on ourselves because they are taught when they come over here not to trust the black here. TBI said, no, we are both. TBI also said, we are not African and the FBA experience is unique to this land. He also said that how have they helped FBAs? I'm gonna go to Trey's video. We kind of spoke to West Indies a little bit, so I feel like it makes sense to kind of throw to this. And then I'll kind of allow you the first word, Dre.
Misunderstood by almost everyone and already in society's bad books, some very confused British teenagers looked to US soul power.
I do remember in 1968 when the guys did their Black Power salute, really empowering to us, you know, this black British generation that was growing up to see people make a stand by, you know, being black.
Black America had discovered politics. Soon, a Black Panther movement was established in Britain, and it achieved the first and most significant step towards creating an identity, the adoption of a word, now commonplace, then radical.
First we were Negro, then we were colored, and then we were West Indian. And so if we pick the worst possible term to describe ourselves, then hopefully it will stop there. So we said, look, we're all calling ourselves black.
Black became the word around which an identity was being formed.
Yeah, I throw to you, Trey. I'm sure you can probably get that more context also.
Yes. So there's a lot to address, but I'll try to just touch on everything and be quick with it. But I do like the idea of Pan Africanism. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not like anti-Africa or anything like that. But someone said we can't expect them to fight for us, and so that means we need to look out for our own self-interest, just like a lot of every other group does. And like we've done a lot for Pan-Africanism. We started Pan-Africanism. We fought for the Ethiopians when they were being invaded by the Italians. We inspired global movements. We talk about the glory of ancient Africa. We fought for South Africa. During apartheid, we even call ourselves African Americans, even though we've never been to Africa. And our grandmothers, great grandmothers, tell us that we're Indians. And on top of that, you talked about Tariq Nasheed. He's one of the main people that gave big ups to Africa multiple times with I think it was like the most popular documentary about that topic ever. And he hasn't said anything about Africa negative in any of those documentaries. It's just that he retaliates when people come at him. And I think that's fair and just because it's almost like Black Americans have no right to defend ourselves in our own self-interest. And when we say we're going to focus on that, now all of a sudden we're xenophobic. So now I disagree with that notion. And also, I have to ask, like, what has the diaspora ever done for Black Americans? I'm not saying that they're obligated to, but I'm saying we've done a lot for them, but I can't think of what they've done for us here.
Can I just interject real quick to say Marcus Garvey was Jamaican.
He was trying to get us all to go to Africa. I don't want to go to Africa.
He created, at the time, the largest Black organization to ever be created in America at the time, which then went on to influence Malcolm X's parents, who was a part of that organization, which birthed Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King is cited as referencing Garvey as one of his biggest inspirations to the civil rights movement. So I can't say that they've never done anything because a lot of what Garvey is known for is his work done in America, which then led to, inspire the next generation of civil rights leaders.
Well, I don't want to get too much into Marcus Garvey because there's a lot. I have mixed feelings about him because a lot of the things I agree with. But that was, if I amend that statement, I say, what have they done for us recently? Then that brings them out of it. So, and then also Stokely Carmichael is somebody from that area too. And even presently, Nipsey Hussle is a Black immigrant that I think was doing a lot of positive things in the area as far as building the community and pushing for us to be independent, which I think even if our music is degenerate, if at least we should own it and get all the money from it. And I think I'm about that movement. But just the last thing I was going to say, because somebody said, I don't want to call them pawns, anything like that, because I guess words like that can be taken and misconstrued. I don't mean that like negatively, but at the end of the day, I don't know what bringing you said we only have 1% of the land. I don't know what bringing millions of Africans is going to help us get more than 1% of the land. It's not going to help FBAs get more land. Like that, I'm not really following the benefit of that. And also, as far as Buffalo Soldiers, they were fighting the French. And if I was the Spanish. So if I was a Black American during that time, I would love the opportunity to be able to kill oppressors and be able to get away with it. So that wasn't like us being pawns against them. And also the last thing, we were primarily on the Union. So this idea that we were on both the Confederate and the Union, that's kind of, we won the war for the Union. We fought to fight for the Union. So I don't want to like get into the, like, even if some Confederate soldiers brought their slaves, like those aren't necessarily Confederate soldiers. They weren't generals or anything like that. I can tell you plenty of Black soldiers that fought for the Union that should be celebrated.
I think what's important to note, Trey, is that nonetheless they were there, and I think you see how you made the nuance of why they were there. I think that's important to kind of note moving forward for all African people. But that's all.
Confederate soldiers bringing their slaves is not soldiers, though, bro.
That's not in all cases, but I'll let it.
Come on, man. This is the section of everything. We can't dwell on the. I'm not be like that. Come on.
I agree.
So two things. I guess Trey, there was a question. What about Ghana's dual citizenship program that they're offering? Would there not be something for Black people?
We can't go there like empty-handed the way that they can come over here with crumbs. Like we really can't. You have to have a bag. That's
nigga said with crumbs.
I mean, like, come on. I mean, they really can't.
Like just so I don't.
Come on, man. You're not gonna act like every Black immigrant has a bag, bro. Like, come on.
Is it okay if I jump in real quick?
No, let me.
So Alex, jump in, but John, I know Johnny.
Let me hop in there. Yeah, I gotta.
All right.
Move it over.
All right, so let's go, Johnny, G, then Alex.
Yeah, so like, in my head, I've been thinking I think, if we talk about, because we was talking about some of those Caribbean states, like you got Jamaica, you got Haiti, you got countries that were basically founded on slavery, but the slaves in those countries were somehow able to fight for their sovereignty and create countries. If you look at like Black Americans and we're in this country we weren't able to do that. We were able to, negotiate for peace. But this is hey, let me finish, Trey, but we're in a country that's still ran by white people. So we're asking the diaspora to help us as Black Americans. That's them fighting against America. And I don't think that they're, and I think maybe it's our lack of having that nationality that's just only our own has kind of conflicted and hurt, doesn't allow people to help us because we're part of this American story. You can't fight against America. But to help us would be fighting against America.
We have fought against America, and we've always fought against America. If it wasn't us fighting for America, we'd still be in bondage. So sometimes I want to be cool with it, but when people downplay our accomplishments here, it's really it's a real pet peeve, man, because we have so much to be proud of that they don't teach in school. And I've done a lot of my own research about some people that I'm very proud of that were warriors. We had a very strong military class, so it's not like you almost make it seem like they finally decided that, treating slaves was bad and they had a moral thought, so they decided to free us. No, we forced them to do the right thing. If America would not be a democracy, we forced America to live up to America's principles.
You're saying Black people forced them, forced them to free us, the Black people did?
Yes, Delaney, I think he became he had some rank in the military, but he begged and pleaded and caught Lincoln in, I guess, a moment of when he needed to allow us to fight for the Union because it was for our freedom. We also had rebellions like every few years. All the rebellions that we had. So eventually we were going to free ourselves. Slavery was becoming unsustainable, especially after Haiti got their freedom and, there was all the hostility there. So it wasn't as if they just decided out of the kindness of their heart to free us, bro. We got to give ourselves way more credit than that.
No, I mean, hold on. Okay, I'll listen.
Go ahead, Johnny.
Well, I mean, of course, like they had stuff going on, but like when it comes like the military class, like we might have fought and we might have forced their hand, but we didn't go as far as like some of these other like the Haitians. They fought their way out and created a whole country, and they kicked
Johnny,
like
that's just
like
a completely different scale, man. Like this, not to like cut you off, but like you're talking about like an island, a remote island with barely any troops there, and then the African population on that island outnumbering the white people there 10-1. Like that's a
we
completely different
outnumbered the
thing.
white people in the South 4-1. Like I
It's
mean, it's not like I mean I get it, but that's what I'm saying. But
not
like
necessarily like I think that's the dynamic between the slavery that happened in the Caribbean and slavery that happened in America. Like literally like we outnumber them while we were down there.
so the
Like
slavery in America is worse than what happened. What went on in this country was like uniquely worse
uh
than what went on in other
I
The
countries.
death
wouldn't
rate was higher. The death rate was way higher in the Caribbean than it
yeah
was in
because
America.
I
like
think you're just saying that like rebelling was different. Like in
Oh, right.
Haiti, you had numbers on your side by a lot.
yeah, numbers on your side. Like you can't go and
And
have
then
like
you wasn't sound like a very isolated situation.
yeah, you couldn't send reinforcements and all that stuff. That wasn't necessarily the case. But
And unity.
uh one thing that I wanted to address, I keep hearing this question being asked to the group by members in the panel and members in the audience, and what have the diaspora done for FBAs? What have they ever done for us? And I think this is kind of like the question that I'm getting at. It's somewhat ahistorical and somewhat like, for lack of a better word, an example of like Dunning Kruger. You don't know, so therefore you assume. But I think what I ultimately hear is you don't want what the diaspora has to offer. You don't care what the diaspora has to give because, like, literally, go Google search it. How many African countries will, hey, no questions asked, come over here? I'm not sure what Trey was saying. Like, Ghana, prime example. Hey, are you African? Are you of African descent? Yes. All right. Here's your citizenship. That is literally that simple. Throughout the entire diaspora, like Eric Bischoff, I can't remember the exact island, but there were so many freedom fighters setting up shop in the islands for Black people to come repatriate there, only for America to pretty much quash it and pretty much blow it up at the genesis of something starting. So I kind of reject this notion that no one's doing anything. If anything, the new novel concept is that we haven't been working together for the last how many centuries. I think that's kind of disingenuous. Like you wouldn't have Malcolm X, someone who is of West Indian heritage, leading an entire movement, and then going to Africa, getting more in tune with like his beliefs and all that stuff. If we weren't working together, let's see, we weren't able to get.
Well, hey, as you're
yeah.
thinking through it, A Black, I'm sure you have some commentary.
Yeah, sure.
Nah, not right now.
Let me jump in here then. Let me jump in here. So just my personal point of view is I think, the term FBA, the term AD, whatever it's called, I don't care about how it's marketed and how it's packaged, but I do think there needs to be something clear there for people who do descend from American slavery, right? I do think there needs to be a distinction, but I don't think it needs to be in isolation where you're not connected to everybody else, okay? Now, that said, my personal experience, one family member was able to track to the 1865 census. And so if you know anything about 1865, that is a crucial year for Black history in America, right? On that census, my oldest ancestor that I can track at this point, like with paper, was not even listed as Black, one, okay?
What are listed, Umar?
They were mulatto, literally on the record, okay?
That's deep, man.
Yeah, so when we talk about just, this is one of the reasons why I don't like the term African American, because the reality is, at what generation was a nigga African? I don't know. I really can't tell you, like, who got off the boat, when they got here, what tribe. I can't tell you if they took a stop in Haiti first, then made their way to. I have no clue how we got here, right? And so, for me, the term African American doesn't really click that well, because it's just something that, like, I have of all the generations I can research, everything is here. And the oldest thing that I could reference was mulatto. And then, trust me, if you seen my grandmama side of them, like, there's they is light, you know what I'm saying? So it's like the work keep getting stepped on generation after generation, right? And so, as a mix of who I am, like, I don't know, because it was created here. It didn't really exist before America was created. So that's one thing. And then the other thing I want to highlight is that when it comes to Pan-African, like, I love the idea, but I've been to Africa and I have a lot of African friends. And the reality is that the continent of Africa isn't united, one.
Facts.
When you go to any country in Africa, the country within is not united, two. And when I went to Kenya, that was when I first took a step back and said, all these niggas is black, and yet there's more inequality in terms of rich and poor than I've ever seen in my life. But everybody's black. So that's an issue. But black people are doing it to each other. Now, granted, colonial influence, etc. I know that there's a psychology play there that's unique to colonialism that isn't slavery, right? But the reality is that community, a lot of the communities in Africa have been brainwashed to adopt a colonial mindset, the same way that our community here in America has been brainwashed to adopt this other mindset, this white mindset that was created, because white wasn't a thing until around 1600 or so, right? So when this whole thing of race was created, it was so unique to America. I feel like that's why we need our own thing. But at the same time, I think it is important for oppressed populations to understand that when you go all the way up the hierarchy, like, we're all fighting the same battle mostly. And that's why I think it's important for us to come together, whether it's Spanish, whether it's South Asia. I mean, when you look at a map and you see what that little small piece of Europe did to everything else, then you got to understand that there's something at play there. It's not an accident. And then everything else that has been colonized, like, how do we come together across that to really take the power back that has been taken away before that Europe takeover took place, whenever it took place. You know what I'm saying? So those are some of my thoughts as it relates to Pan-Africanism and lineage. Is just, that's why I lean the way I lean.
I'm ready now.
Oh, go ahead. Go for it.
Yeah, so I want to kind of piggyback off G and that mulatto thing. You know, it kind of takes me back to the lineage side, because it's like, these words, these identifiers is where things are going to get murky, you know, with who we are and whatnot. Let me finish. I see you shaking your head. Because it's like, a lot of people are going to be able to claim connection or association with African ancestry, or dismiss it, based on who you're descended from. You're descended from a slave, but you also might be descended from a slave owner. So I believe it's going to take some legal work, really, to go in to really define these words. What is what and who is who. I'm fortunate enough where I can trace my family really far back, like even before Ancestry and DNA and all that came about. I had historians in my family. My family has a very deep history in Charlotte on my mother's side, in Fayetteville on my father's side, which is very insulated, very unmixed. Most of their ancestry tests come back like 90% Nigerian, although they've been there since like early 1800s and whatnot. My mom's side, way more mixed. I got Irish in me. I got Scottish in me. So right, what I'm saying right now is not to be argumentative. It's just like, I even question how are they going to do this? Because when I think about what I want and what we need, I think about what the rebuttals are going to be from government, from white people about, well, you also have this thing. You know, who's to say that you didn't benefit from this slave owner? Or this slave owner had this mulatto son who gave him this land, you know, so you guys are good over here. Like I'm just interested to see how this is going to kind of turn out, because we so mixed in a lot of different ways as Black Americans. It's just going to be interesting to me, like going forward, you know. But
I get you. Real quick,
Hey
10
Trey,
seconds. Okay.
before you go into that, AG hit the video. I think the caption of this was me walking around a shithole country. Oh, let me make sure I say that right.
Brazil. That's why you have the name Brazil. This is Brazil people. And they started marrying with the guns here, so they became one.
Oh, you recording? Yeah.
Are we going to explain the significance of watching this?
yeah, I want to kind of give this some context real quick. So the whole point of this, because I know when we came in, we was talking about the Trump quote, "shithole countries." People keep saying, you know, what are Africans going to do for us, or what does diaspora do for us? And my thing is, we can't expect them to do things for us if we're not building relations with them. If we are talking about a place that we've never visited, if we're not going to touch these places, to see these so-called slums, so-called shanty towns, as Trey mentioned earlier, and kind of see the reality of them, and see that once you're there, you know, I've been to Africa 6 times. My first time, I realized I have my own colonial mind, that even as woke as I think I am, when you get there, you realize you kind of a white man in a lot of ways in your thinking. Why? Because you have a savior's complex, because you're looking around, you're seeing things that should be better, things that people should have. But then you kind of step back and you look around and look at the temperament of people. You see people being happy. You see people not really as worried. They're not stressed out and looking down like you are on the train in New York, where people have all the amenities of the world, but they're miserable. You see that it's bigger than the aesthetics of what you have and material, and it's more so the character of people, the spirituality of people. And it's like, okay, I need to get to know more, because I'm coming with a judgment mindset. Even though I romanticized Africa, I loved it dearly before I got there. Even I came with this whole sense of judgment, and I had to kind of check myself. I'm like, I don't really know shit. So who am I to to kind of talk about a continent with millions of people based on the small amount of people that I've met here and the propaganda that I see on the media? But when I go and I talk to actual people in the streets, they love us, they admire us, they are inspired by us. There isn't this looking down on us. Most of them are looking up to us. They're inspired by our movements, by our culture, just like we're inspired by their culture as well. And it's like, the problem and the division becomes that lack of understanding, that lack of wanting to know these people, them wanting to know us, and seeing how we can build relations to connect. Because that's where the true power is going to come with any movement. That's where the true fear and the power structure comes, when they see us making these international relationships. They didn't care about Martin Luther King marching on that bridge talking nonviolence. He got scared when he started talking about the Vietnam War. When he started meeting with presidents of other countries, they said, "Oh no, we gotta get this nigga out of here." When these leaders start making international connections, and they might build a real friendship with somebody, and then you might get a resource behind them, and you might get a military behind them. That's when shit becomes dangerous. But we can't expect Africa to do nothing for us if we won't even get on a plane and go visit for ourselves. Like, it's crazy to me.
Yeah. So I'm before I throw the Trey, I'm gonna play one last video, and then Trey, I'll let you respond.
Let's think about Black Americans. You know, one funny thing Zambians, I think we look at Black Americans like they are like us. They are like our brothers and sisters. We don't look at them to be strange. If anything, the white man will look them to be strange. Even Indians, you know that Indians are closer to us more than the Muzungu, more than the whites. But the blacks, everyone except they will just tell by the accent. You know, we have different cultures, but there's a motto which they say in Zambia that we are one Zambia, one nation. So anyone who looks black to us is our brother.
That's it. That's true. We are brothers and sisters.
Yeah. Trey, I'll throw it to you. I felt like that was appropriate where A Black was at.
Well, appreciate it. Just to answer A Black's question real quick, I like the FBA reparations movement because it makes things simple. So we don't have to worry about all the research and everything like that. All you have to do is to be classified as black for 12 years and be able to trace your lineage to America back to the 1860 census. It can say mulatto, it can say whatever, it doesn't matter. If you can trace back here and you're black now, then you are qualified for reparations. Because if we're going to get reparations, then we can't really spend too much time focusing on the plebiscite and, going back. We got to keep it simple to keep our movement strong. And just like again,
hey Trey, so if you can't trace it back that far, even if your family was back that far, just because of shanty census shit, are you just SOL?
I think you would just have to get to the back of the line, and then we would have to deal with that later. But we don't want to wait on the few people who can't trace back, because they kept very good records of the people on the plantation. And
they can do is prick your blood. They could tie all of this together with prick.
Well, yeah, no, I guess I'm saying past plantation shit. Like if you just go 1910s, 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, where the best records for a lot of families have not been taken. Like I know my mother right now, and she's doing the research to track our whole entire family, and it's a tough process in itself.
Yeah.
And I imagine that for multiple different, families of blacks that are
the majority.
Majority, yeah. Right. I don't think that it's too many people that have their family lineage written on the side of a Bible. Those are the rarities where they had a really good culture within their family. I think that most black people will probably struggle to get all the way back to 1965. If not most, I would just say a lot.
That's just like your great-great-grandparents. It wasn't like a millennium ago.
That's not true, bro. Great-great-grandparents be 80 years old today.
Yeah.
I
remember my great-great-grandma. Yeah, she was
born in
not a slave.
I mean, the last person who was born a slave died in 1970. So, I mean, I know it was far back, but I think it can be accomplished. I don't think we should put the thing on hold. I think we should help everyone.
I got a question, Trey. Is it you have to trace it back to 1860 or any time prior to that?
Well, I mean, 1860 is the cutoff.
I mean
further the better, but but a lot of people have been able to do that. So what's up?
What you're saying, it is simple, and that is cool. But my thing is, you're asking this whole reparations movement from the U.S. government. So inevitably, it's going to get. I'm sorry.
Demanding. We're not asking.
Demanding, adding, whatever. You wanted the money to come from them. They're going to decide on what you are. You can write down whatever as simple as you like. Then white people are going to be the ones to say, this is what dictates who gets what. You're not going to be able to demand and present nothing unless you're going into the White House like January 6th and them crackers did or something.
Well,
you don't care about
it's okay if I jump in real quick.
They're going to set the rules. They're going to set the rules. I'm just saying,
before we go too further down this path. One thing that I want to ask a question is mostly the trade. Do you think that the FBA, ADOS, I guess delineation, because you at the beginning you said this is about ethnogenesis. Do you think that it's specific enough as it is for pretty much the function that you want to use it as? And the reason why I say that is I did some digging into my heritage, and essentially I think there is two things. You need to have the foundational building of America and pretty much your ancestors' labor being extracted and put it into America's infrastructure and economy, right? But
No, not all that. It's
like
really just those two things. Like you know, it's not about like the
yeah,
labor.
but like I'm getting to that. Like what I'm ultimately saying is like my dad's matrilineal side, all the like 5 generations back. So pretty much like at the dawn of like anybody coming over to the New World started in Antigua. There were pretty much sugar plantations in Antigua, and those same sugar plantations were used to fund the pretty much Harvard Law School being made. Also, on my mom's side, she has Jamaican and Trinidadian heritage. On the Trinidadian side, I am a direct descendant of American Maroon. If you want to know what that is a black African American who was enslaved in America, who literally got up, fight with the British, and they got repatriated in Trinidad and Tobago.
Right.
Furthermore, my granddad on my dad's side, New Jersey.
You get a slice of the pie, brother.
Yeah.
No, but like what I'm saying.
Oh, he gets some. He gets some.
Bro, you get it. You get a slice of the pie, my brother.
but
Welcome
like,
to the table.
Hey, that man say, "What's up, Trey?"
No. It's not even that. Like even like my granddad, born in Hackensack, New Jersey, 1922, and we can trace back 3 generations prior to him even being born there. But I think even like last week, like you were like, they're making this, you're making that. Well, like my lineage is pretty much all over the place because that's pretty much what happened as a result of American chattel slavery. I think my point is it didn't just happen in the 48 continuous states of America. It happened everywhere. So I'm just asking you, like, for someone like me, like, do you think that not your definition, because you're a part of a larger movement, but do you think that definition as is, do you think it's inclusive for people like me, or do you think it was supposed to include people like me from the get-go? Because there's a lot of people who are in Jamaica right now and Haiti to Trinidad, Cuba, like haven't been in this country for years, but they are direct descendants of people who were enslaved here, who got pushed over there, moved over there. One day you might be on this plantation, and the next day you're on that plantation. That was a very common thing. So, to go back to what G said, we need our own thing. At least for me, I don't know. Maybe I'm partial because like my mom is Jamaican and that's what I grew up around. But like, I'm having a hard time understanding what our own thing and how is that distinct from the entire North American experience that people who look like us has experienced over here. But that's all I got.
I mean, that's a good point. My bad. What's up? My bad. What's good? I don't want to dominate the conversation.
Oh no, yeah.
Okay, or just to answer what you were saying, man, if it's just those two criteria, I think that captures the vast majority of people in America. It's going to take some work, but I think we can trace our lineage back because the United States government keeps very good records. So, and then if you classify as black the last 12 years and you qualify, if you don't, then you're in the minority. That's why we're delineating, because we want to make this as simple as possible. I encourage everyone in the diaspora to seek their reparations claim with their prospective governments. If you're in the Caribbean and your British islands, then take that up with Britain. If you're in Africa, take that up with them. You know what I mean? But as far as us here, foundational Black Americans, we just want to keep this focus very simple. So that way it's less difficult. I mean, it's more difficult for it to be, for them to fight against it. Yeah.
But like, don't you think there needs to be a cutoff? Because like, what about someone who can only trace their ancestry back to like Florida while they were under Spanish rule and they're enslaved by Spanish people? Like they lived here, they are here, they've been here, but who do they get reparations from? And
that was before 1860 though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then they would qualify because when the United States caught them in 1860, then that's enough. Like, there's no more complicated than that.
Okay, but like ultimately, what I'm saying is another question that I have is, what are we seeking reparations in form of? Is reparations in the form of the American government providing, like, pretty much reconciling all the damage of slavery, or are we seeking reparations from
cash payments? That's what
no. But like, not that. Like, it's not necessarily what the reparations is. Who? Like, are we seeking reparations from individuals who were like specifically responsible for the atrocities of slavery, to like the civilians or the entire infrastructure of America?
All the above. Everyone who was culpable. the United States government, who signed the 3/5 compromise, where they said we would get representation, but we weren't real humans. And also, I wouldn't be opposed to Wells Fargo, who inherited money from leasing out slaves to get their money, and also the banks and the insurance companies that got their start insuring slaves. We can calculate the amount that they owe, what they benefited from it, and we have a direct claim that's been kicked down generation after generation. We couldn't fight during Jim Crow, so now this is the time where we can fight for that. So I wouldn't limit the culpable parties, but I would say all of the above if we can trace it back. Right, it's just
A lot of
keep it as simple
companies.
as possible.
I mean, one thing I want to is just to respond to Alex. Like, I think a lot of what you highlighted is why this is such a difficult conversation, because of that reality of the history. And in my opinion, you know, if you were at some point a slave here and then you left, went to Jamaica, went wherever you ended up being, that doesn't take away from your experience in America as a slave. And the other piece to it as well is that I don't know for sure that only Africans were enslaved. So it's like, I don't want to limit reparations only on the basis of like African descent, because slavery was so complicated in America. And so it is a very difficult conversation, but the reality is, with that difficulty said, there is a debt to be paid to those who had to overcome this, not just, not just in terms of up until 1865, but then the things that came after slavery to further disenfranchise people of color, right? And so I think that you know how that looks and the complications in terms of getting it together is very much true. But then when my question is like, you make this distinction of like North America, like we're all North America, but that in itself is a distinction, because a lot of the slaves weren't just sent to the Caribbean, they were sent to Brazil and they were sent to South America. And if you look at the geography of some, like especially Trinidad, that's like a throw away from South America, off the coast of like Suriname and all those things, like at the top of northern South America. A lot of those Caribbean countries are right there all together, hence why a lot of that labor was sent to that part of the world around the equator. But like even to say like we're North America, not South America, I'm curious why you're making that distinction. Is it because you weren't colonized by the Portuguese, so you consider it more North American style because it was a British, Spanish mix of stuff going on, or why do you make that distinction?
Well, I guess I'm not necessarily trying to make that distinction. I think that when I say North America, like I keep in like outside of Brazil and some parts of South America, I guess you could just say America, period. Like you are right. The majority of slaves did go to the Caribbean and Brazil. So I think that is, you know, I don't know. Like I feel like a lot of these conversations kind of exclude that experience. Although I don't think, not necessarily sure how integral the Brazil slave trade was to like the entirety of America and pretty much in that conversation. But I ultimately think that for as combined and melted and mixed that all of our experiences are, I really want to encourage all of us, like me, Trey, A Black, all of us. I really want us to kind of distance ourselves from any disparaging, because you really don't know who you might be talking about. Like you might think that like, oh, them Jamaicans on there. Like you might have somebody who has a pretty similar story to your lineage and vice versa. So yeah, I think my whole thing is I think we can have these conversations in a really productive way. I'm not saying that's what you're doing, Trey. I think that's my only main qualm and concern about the ADOS FBA movement in a whole. Like it really like it doesn't take into account how similar this entire experience has been for all of us in the new world. So I would just say new world, America, but it all kind of the same thing to me.
Hey, Clint, can I hop in there?
Oh, what?
Yeah, no, I think Alex makes a very good point. Even when he was talking about like, you know, your roots and stuff. You know, we talked last week. I ain't really, you ain't, you know, tell me all of that. But like, that make that matters as far as the struggle, as far as like what we're doing and trying to progress. But I think what we talking about is like empathy. We got to understand like the colonialism and white supremacy is the same beast. Now it manifests itself differently when you go to different countries, different regions of the world. But in essence, it's the same beast that we fighting against. Like it's the they all judge us based on it's the melanin. Whether you talk about the Portuguese took you over, the Spanish might have took you over, the French or the British, but there's a commonality within all the people who were slaves and all the people who were the colonizers or the masters. It's a very clear commonality in between all of us. And like I say, I think with the FBA you have to have an intentionality to show us to you know have respect for our struggle uniquely to America, but the struggle was everywhere. The struggle was in South America. The struggle was in, the Caribbean. The struggle still going on in Africa in a lot of places. So we're all having this struggle, but a lot of time we have to have the empathy to understand everybody's struggle. We have to have the accountability to overcome our own struggles too. Ain't nobody gonna help us from Africa gonna help us to overcome this American shit that we dealing with. We can't expect them to. We can't get mad when they don't. Vice versa. They can't expect us to come over there and help them over there in Africa. So we all have to have our own accountability, but the struggle we have to have empathy for the struggle when it comes like on the Pan Africanism. We have to have the empathy for their struggle because it's the same struggle, just manifested itself differently. So
And I guess I'll hop in and start to change gears a little bit, and this will kind of like start pulling at the appeal for Pan Africanism. This is kind of like a really baseline, broad question, and it'll kind of build itself to the conversation. Um, so I ask this: how important do y'all think African history is to Black Americans?
It's way less important than our history here. That's for sure. Because we have a lot to be, like, why are we going to reach back to like what happened in Timbuktu? Although I'm proud of what they did there in the kingdoms of Benin and how Aristotle, all the Greeks went and studied in Africa. That's all well and good. But I think if we want to gain momentum, we need to think about the Malcolm X's, the Martin Luther Kings, the Stokely Carmichaels, the Medgar Evans, the Black Panthers, Huey Newton. We have so much over here that just hypes me up when I think about that. So I think that's why, if you notice, when we talked about African history, nobody had any problem with that. But as soon as we start talking about our history in America, that's when they start trying to take curriculum out of schools, especially in Florida. So I think there's some power in us tapping into
You
our
think that they teach
foundation of
African
American
history
roots.
in schools?
They don't teach it.
They do in the islands.
But they're not like banning the books though. Like they're going out of their way. They don't want us to learn about Ruby Bridges. And I think that's more.
You think that there's like a plethora of like African history
They don't
books
they
in
don't gotta
schools?
ban the African books because they not there, man. It's like if you don't know who you are, you don't know where you're going. Like there was a reason why during enslavement, even afterwards, they were intentional about keeping us in the dark and making you feel like your history started at slavery. If you knew that you were more, you knew that you could become more. If you only think that you were a slave, that you're only descended from a slave, then you're going to have a limited worldview, a limited view on what you can achieve and who you can be. There's not no African books to ban because there's not no African book. I don't know where y'all went to school, in public school. I grew up in the South. I didn't hear about half this shit until freshman year in college. Like I came back my freshman year in college, woke as fuck, talking crazy to my parents. Like I learned a whole, but I didn't even know about the
So
Caribbean.
like you went to a HBCU.
Yeah, but I didn't even really know about the Caribbean. And maybe I know some
Mm-hmm.
of y'all have Caribbean background, so y'all had that privilege. Like I didn't even know there was Black people outside of islands, outside of Jamaica. Maybe my family's ignorant or whatever, but until I went to DC and I went to Howard and I'm meeting Black people from Trinidad, from West India, I'm meeting Africans, I'm meeting all these type of. I didn't even know this, and it wasn't taught in my school. And our African history was a very, I mean, our Black African history was very short. maybe 2 chapters. You learn about Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, get off the bus, marching. There was no Malcolm X. There was no Marcus Garvey. You know, there was nothing radical.
They might have do some Madam C.J. Walker in there.
You might get Madam C.J. Walker in a book report from a black girl, but even that, like, so it's like you don't gotta suppress African history here because that's not already. They already don't lead with that. So now we have critical race theory going on. Like, it's a reason why they don't want you to know who you are. Is our Black American history important? Yes, but that also don't mean we discount African history as well, African culture as well. And we see the connections of our cultures. We see the connections of hip hop to Africa, of our food to Africa, of the Black church to Africa, and all these different connections that came from African traditions that you can shake your head about, but
it doesn't though, bro.
Proof. Yes, it does.
Who told you came from Africa?
Huh?
Who told you came from Africa?
Who told me?
His phenotype.
That's a different conversation.
Kinky hair.
Who told you you was a slave?
Bro, there were black people on every continent. There were black people on every continent.
Who told you to hate yourself?
Bro, I don't hate myself.
I don't want the conversation to send into that. I think we were doing really good.
It's not descending. That's the real question. This what I'm
asking Africa, bro.
You know, who told you to hate yourself? Who told you to hate the color of your skin? Like, who told you?
I don't think that's what Trey hates the color.
Yeah. All right. So I guess if I'm to clean it up a little bit, I think that Trey is going into the idea that there were blacks in America prior to slavery, and so that there's not specifically the idea of like
reparation claim. Then
no, it doesn't, because we were still enslaved.
Hey, that's our other Unpacked episode for next week.
Okay, that's cool.
Okay, yeah, I understood where we was trying to get to. I was gonna let y'all unpack that if y'all wanted to, but Trey, I'll toss it back to you.
Man, I understand. Like, some people have dual allegiances. That's why people with dual allegiances may not be the best people to make our claim for reparations, because
dual allegiances.
Right, like if you're hypothetically, like if you're married to someone that's African, or if you have an African parent, or if you're biracial, they aren't like, you're not going to see a white person have a biracial be the person that helps determine the direction of white people. So I think the people that are speaking to this need to be people that are committed to representing this lineage here, because anyone who wants to go to Africa has the right to do so. Most of us do not have family ties in Africa, and most of us don't yearn to return to what some people call the motherland. It's nice to offer a citizenship without a bag. I don't necessarily believe that. I like to see some proof, but if that's true, then that's nice. But most of us don't want to go there, or don't yearn to go there at least.
That goes back to my original thing. I think there is things being offered, you just don't want them.
Never mind. I'll let you.
But I'm saying, but if we don't want to go, if we're fighting, what we're fighting for is here. I want to make better. We can't all go to Africa. So the people that are in here struggling, I want to stay here and fight for them. So and also part of Black culture is, what do you see when everybody running a direction? Do you ask questions? Do you go look where they're running? Like Becky in the horror movie, you go look. No, you run too. So if we see millions of people coming over here from Africa, why in the world would we want to leave where they're running to go to the place where they ran from? They're not like
less than 3 million African immigrants here since 2009. Like,
that's not true, bro. I can bring up the stats.
I can too.
So Trey, as you bring up the stats,
act like it's an invasion of Africans, and it's not.
No, but I'm just saying, if Pan Africanism, if all they're offering us is to go to Africa, then that's not what Pan African is supposed to be. Like, Pan African can't be come to America and benefit from what we fought for, and then offer us to go back to where you ran from. That's not like
asking the institution that oppressed you for money, using their.
You're not asking, we're demanding.
You are asking that. You're not demanding shit. You ain't got it.
You sound defeated.
You're defeated. I'm demanding.
Man, we were doing so good, man.
Oh, my bad. That mentality sounds defeated.
No, your
mentality like that is very counterproductive to our
reparations from these people who are never going to give it to me because they never.
If we're fighting
real quick, right now we can't really hear either one of y'all. Hey, real quick, right now we can't really hear either one of y'all make a point because y'all literally talking at the same time.
But
So
was
I think
responding, I didn't get my
Trey,
chance to get it out.
before you can, I listen. I understand. This is probably we're getting to the crux of like the conversation, so it's probably going to get a little bit more heated. I get it. I guess all I say is let's make sure that we allow space for each other to kind of finish commentary. If needed, I'll put like a minute timer just to make sure everybody's able to have a clean back and forth. But real quick before I throw to Alex just to break it and then allow y'all to get back to it. So you said so-called motherland. You don't believe that Africa is the motherland?
Who said that?
I said
Trey.
that. Oh man, that's a whole conversation for another topic. But no, I don't think Africa is the motherland.
Dog, what in the world? Like what? So what do we define as motherland? Just like what do we mean by that term? Like and why is Africa not the motherland? Like I gotta hear this one.
Man, I got here, but there's all kinds of accounts of the explorers that said that there were black people when they first came here. We also have the Indian Removal Act, where black people were forced to not count themselves as Indians because they would be sent to a reservation. So there
wouldn't you say that those people came from Africa still?
Right.
No, I mean, if they came from Africa 20,000 years ago.
Oh, you think they're that far removed?
No, I'm saying there's evidence of that. I was saving that for another topic, but they found Negro remains in North America from predating when they came over with the Asian.
But the oldest Homo sapien fossils known to man are out of the Kenya, Ethiopia part of the world. Do we agree there?
How do you explain the pyramids in America that are?
You know, Africa's been around the world.
I'm talking about the modern man, the Homo sapien. In terms of those, the oldest Homo sapien fossils, these predate the pyramids than what
they're like
we
200,000 years ago, right?
Crazy number. I don't even know the number, but like old as shit.
So, like you can't like dismiss Africa, but then at the same time talk about Africans being here before slavery. Like, which one is it? Like, yeah, we know Africans circumvented the globe. We were the Olmecs in South America. We've been we've been wide. We've been all over the world. So, but are you a descendant of slaves? But are you a descendant of those Africans that have been here, that have been around the world? Because you just dismissed the diaspora earlier, so you can't be claiming the ones that were here 20,000 years before slavery and all of this shit. Like, which one is it?
Not all FBAs are descendants of slaves. Not everyone was enslaved. There were free.
Okay, we know that, but you are claiming that you are. So you're a foundational Black African.
No, I'm not claiming. I am a descendant of slaves. I'll trace it back, but not all FBAs are descendants of slaves.
Okay.
So what are they getting reparations for?
And what would they be getting reparations for?
They still had I mean, it's not like they were free. They weren't like in bondage like chattel slaves, but at the same time, they didn't have the rights in America that everyone else enjoyed. They had to show their papers or get forced into slavery, like 12 years a slave. So, I mean, and they also had to go through Jim Crow. So it's not as if like just because they weren't chattel slaves that they don't have a claim to what happened in America.
But like just to jump in, like
basically, like they were Black facing racism, like the rest of the diaspora that you dismissed.
Bro, the diaspora should take their fight up with the people who enslaved them. Like, I don't want to. If FBAs are trying to get, or we're fighting for reparations from America, you're kind of derailing the conversation by talking about Africans' claim in Africa. Like, we're talking FBAs. This is when people get a little hostile because FBAs are trying to get their claim with the government, and we have people from talking about Africa. Like, Africa don't have anything to do with this, bro.
They claim.
Hey, let me jump in real quick. I think the question that I have is, I think at the beginning I had a really good understanding what FBA is trying to seek, because like I said, the young gentleman out there in California in charge of the ADOS chapter, he made a really clear definition, and now it seems like it has expanded to like pretty much. But
same. If you're Black and you can trace yourself back to 1860. Like,
yeah, but then Trey, like you just said that, like if you are everybody wasn't enslaved, and if the whole reparations, I'd like, is reparations also for pretty much like civil right violations? Is that a part of it too?
It's for everything that was a part of it. Yeah, like.
But then why is there a cutoff at 1860 if you're talking about Reconstruction and they're on like Jim Crow?
Because that means you endured all of it.
But then that
And you
doesn't
were part
apply
of.
to like people who just, hey, like I was never enslaved and I was a part of. I got my family. I can trace my lineage back to like when my family got rejected for a home from redlining. Like, is that a part of the definition as well?
Like, let me just interject real quick, because outside of slavery, you know, like for example, couple examples, in the syphilis experiment in Tuskegee, for example, not a slave thing, but definitely a government mandated experiment targeting Black population in a harmful way, right? There's also government mandated sterilization documented throughout our history, and I'm talking about, this is the stuff that Hitler studied. Okay,
Yeah.
so the debt that America owes to certain populations, it does stretch beyond just who was enslaved, in my opinion. And this is like, again, this is why the conversation is difficult, but this is why the conversation must be had, because the institutions within America like have systematically attacked our communities in some unique ways. And if we aren't able to find like common ground to agree that, like, you know, that then that's going to just make it difficult to really get anything in return. But to in short, it's not just slavery. Like, outside of slavery, there are other government mandated attacks on our communities that have like bled into, you know, the 60s, 70s.
I understand. I understand that, but like, there are times like I'm a big like nerd. I think everybody knows that. And I was watching a lot of videos, and there was like prominent people within the FBA ADOS movement like, no, we're not talking about all that other stuff. We're talking about reparations for American child slavery. And the reason why I bring that up, you brought up the Tuskegee experiments. Like, they paid like a $9 million settlement to the victims of that. And then like furthermore, like there's a lot of people where like, hey, like for instance, like Rosewood, like when they decimated that place, they also got reparations. So like, I think what is novel about reparations for slavery is because it's unique. Hey, we're getting reparations for our ancestors who are no longer here on their behalf. But America has paid out reparations to Black communities for individual atrocities that
Not
happen.
America as a federal institution,
Yes.
maybe state and local. State and local does not represent the institution of America.
I think I have a better understanding. Like, we're trying to roll in a federal accountability as well outside of, I guess, like local and state stuff.
At the end of the day, weed is legal in some states, but federally speaking, they could come in and shut all that down at the federal level if they wanted to, right? Like, and that's the difference. It's like certain states have certain laws. Like, for example, Oregon, it was illegal for Black people to migrate to Oregon once slaves were freed. They said, nah, niggas, no, none of y'all allowed, right? Like, different states have different rules. The reason why we even celebrate Juneteenth was because allegedly the last to find out was it 4 years later, randomly in Texas, I believe, right? So Texas definitely had their own little thing. I mean, Texas is a unique story in itself in terms of how it became the state of Texas that we know it today. That's a whole other conversation. But yeah, it's like, what we know as America, right? It started with 13 states or colonies, and then it expanded west. And as that expansion thrived, it thrived off the backs of what was established in those colonies. And so like, for me, as somebody who is really like in the heart of North Carolina, I really am big on, like, I feel like for reparations, what should be owed is I feel like we shouldn't have to pay any federal or state taxes. That's one thing. I feel like we shouldn't have to pay any federal or state taxes. Two, I feel like any higher education institution that takes federal money, we get to go for free. So that's basically all of them. I feel like when it comes to healthcare, whether you're private, public, if you take quote unquote government issued insurance or whatever, we should be able to go for free. And I feel like if we can get no state or federal income taxes, if we can get access to quality healthcare and we can actually build a community where you expect to learn and not have to be on the sidelines because of how expensive education is. Like, that's a real thing for the Black community. Like, it can be a reach because of the cost of education, because of your history. What if we flip that narrative and was like, nah, nigga, you got a pathway and it's here. You don't have to worry about getting sick. You don't have to worry about you don't have to worry about paying taxes. That in itself, I'm gonna have a nice position to do something better than what I can do today, in my opinion.
So no cash.
Can I just respond to no cash real quick? I like Andrew Yang. I don't know if y'all rock with Yang back in the day.
UBI.
Yeah, UBI. I'm always been a believer in a universal basic income. I think we're a rich enough country to do it.
Johnny
and I think we should cut those checks.
Not so specific for FBA or for everybody?
No, I think America should have a universal basic income, period. And the way that, like I said, that we get our reparations from government, I don't feel like it had, like, our reparations don't have to be in a form of cash payments. Like, maybe we can figure out some other ways to make it, to monetize it. But, you know, cash loses value. So that's, I'm not, universal basic income is one thing. Giving me reparations in the form of universal basic income is something different.
Johnny, hop in there real quick. Alex, I know you want to go. You're right after. Go ahead.
No, honestly, I'm just listening. This is a great conversation.
Oh, I thought you felt some way about UBI. My bad.
Oh, I'm totally against UBI because I don't think because I'm just against UBI, but I think it's a great conversation. I'm just listening.
Okay,
it's not reparations.
I think one thing that I really want to take my part in introducing to the conversation is I think it's important to have a more inclusive conversation because for the simple reason of there are going to be negative ramifications to in the event that reparations is paid out. There are going to be negative ramifications. I just don't see that there is ever going to be a situation where people who look like us get, pretty much compensated for the atrocities that happened to our ancestors, and not even our ancestors, like what happened currently today, and not have that be turned into what happened in Charleston with Dylan Roof and in the church. And the reason why I say that is I don't think anyone is going to make a distinction once they have the hatred, kind of festering inside of them to say hey, nah, not him. He's from Kenya, or nah, not him. He's from St. Kitts. I think we're all going to be looked at as a collective as Black people, and I think we need to make sure that we're addressing that part of the conversation. What does that look like? And also, in addition to that, I think another part of it is if we are relying on the American government to essentially make us whole with their, fiat currency, I think we need to take into account what happens to currency at a whim. For example, Venezuela, a very self-sufficient, sustaining state, had all the oil in the world. Immediately, overnight, nah, oil ain't worth shit, and y'all don't got an economy no more. And then the next thing you see, you go in a grocery store, people can't even buy bread, milk, and so on and so forth. What makes us think that the minute they give us any substantial amount of money, that money isn't going to go poof into flames? I think reparations is needed. I think reparations is important, but I think it's somewhat short-sighted to think that reparations is fiat currency. I kind of like G's approach where, hey, it's this and it's that, and you get this. But to me, that sounds a lot like democratic socialism, and I'm not opposed to that. But I think a lot of times what happens in these conversations is oh yeah, so what y'all want is democratic socialism? Yeah, but only for us. Well, in order to give this to y'all, we're gonna have to give this to everybody who's within, America. Now I want no more. I think that is pretty much what everyone in this country is kind of guilty of, Black, white, and in between. But that's all I got, fellas.
Trey.
So one thing about the 1860 census, it means that you didn't come here willingly. If you came to this racist country and you're Black on your own, then why would you be entitled for compensation? made the decision to come here. But for the people who aren't here willingly and they contributed to this country, got everything, they are owed a debt. And right now, the means of transfer right now is cash. When immigrants like I'm not native, mainly Hispanics, the migrants come over here, they're getting money for their rent, they're getting money for their food, and there are also other groups that get cash payments. So as Black people, it seems like we have like kind of like a slavish mentality where we just think that if other people get something, we're not entitled to the same. If they're getting something, we're every bit as entitled to. I'm not scared of Dylan Roof. If we have money, we can buy guns, and we fought them with less. Like anything they can do, we can do too. So I don't want to not get reparations because we're scared of what white supremacists would do to us like that. And if you have a mentality where you don't think we're going to get it, and you think, then I mean, you're free to like. Why would you even be part of the conversation if you don't think it's going to happen anyway? Because
no, it's not. It's not a matter of being afraid. I think it's something that needs to be addressed and talked about. Like, I'm not saying we gotta be afraid of the Dylan Roofs of the world or anything like that, but like, I think it needs to be said. I think that's why there doesn't need to be any like division amongst us, because the day this happens, because it will happen, the day this happens, like no one's going to make any distinctions because they don't do it now. And I think that's an important part of the conversation that gets left out. Like, no one looks at us any differently. I don't care where your grandma's from. Like, we're all Black at the end of the day. I know we're making this distinction in ethnogenesis because it's important for the conversation of like reparations, but in the grand scheme of how the hegemony pretty much works us against each other, and not just us, like even like poor white people who are pretty much in the same boat to some degree. I think we need to kind of be careful about how we bridge these gaps and mend these wounds that we're kind of in self-inflicting on ourselves. But that's all I had.
Even if it slows down the reparations movement, you think that we should, like, as much as Black Americans have done for the diaspora, you think if there are people that came here willingly, we should adjust our movement to accommodate like other people that came here willingly? Because that's more of the thing where it's like, dang, man.
I think that's the thing, Trey. Like, I think that is to some degree kind of like a straw man argument. Like, I don't think that anybody widely in the diaspora is against Black Americans getting reparations. I think what gets in the way oftentimes is the rhetoric and generally the loud minority of the movement kind of getting in the way of that. I think a part of any political movement, it's important to create allies. And honestly, like, I don't think you're going to find better allies than people who look exactly like you. But oftentimes, like, I don't think this is reflective of the entire group, but a lot of times it's like, yeah, them people over there, they're coming over here and they tethers and they this and they that. It's like, that's unnecessary.
I get where you're coming from. Do you think FBA are going to let some white supremacists go attack Black people? Because when they do that, we all the time, whenever a Black person's being harmed, we don't care where they're from. If they're being treated unfairly, then we're going to stand up for them. Like, it doesn't matter. So if we get our reparations, we're gonna spend with the diaspora. We're gonna,
But here's the thing about
I'm happy to hear that, but yeah.
But the thing about spending, this is why I say money, like to the point of money doesn't hold the same value over time. It can be manipulated. What we could give you a lump sum today and then take away your purchasing power tomorrow. This is why those 40 acres were so critical, because my grandparents grew up on farms. There was no such thing as going to work. Was no such thing as running water, electricity. Like, you grew up on a farm and you had to work to eat. You had to work to live. The house was built by a couple of folks with a hammer and nail, getting materials, right? Like, if you didn't have land, then you couldn't be a capitalist in America at that time. You couldn't produce a crop to sell and then barter or get something in return, right? And so in this world, what does land really look like is the question. In this modern digital age, like, reparations, like, we also need free internet, all right? We need free stuff that's going to help us in this world of this modern world, like, because like what we needed in the past was land, but like, what's the modern land, if you will? You feel what I'm saying? Like, yeah. Like, because all the land has been taken at this point. There are a lot of Black folks with land in the family that's about to get taken away. Like land hasn't, right, like, land isn't money. It's a whole, No, it's not just money, bro. It's
I mean,
it's
if you're getting evicted, then what's going to help you better than some cash? And then if you also, it's going to help the American economy, just like the way stimulus checks helped it. We're not all going to blow the money, but some of us will. We understand that. And the ones that do blow their money, they're going to, like, the economy's going to be booming with all the spending. Same way after the stimulus. And on top of that, if the dollar goes down, then it goes down for everyone. So I'm not saying to bankrupt the government by giving us the $14 trillion like right now. It can be payments, not like a universal income, but if it's something more significant than like the minimum, and if it's not just for everyone, if it's for specifically for Black people, if it's for everyone, then it's not reparations. It's a lift-off program. And I'm saying, and also you mentioned education. If I'm an older person, I'm elderly, I have all these bills, I'm about to get evicted. I don't care about education. I need money.
But you sure? I mean, if you old, dog, like you can't help everybody. You're not gonna get 100% of everybody. Like
grandma, huh?
At some point, then no. So at some point, then you should deserve free care for you. Like you should deserve like a different form of your reparation. Like maybe you don't get education, but maybe the cost of living to be in a quality facility is wildly different for someone who's in a reparations program versus somebody who's not, for example. Like, and those are some expensive places.
But then we have no power. Like if you give us access to your stuff, I would rather have cash so we can build our own stuff, because a lot of us will. And then you have power because you can build institutions. If you give us a voucher to go, be a patronizer of what you control, then we're still in the same boat again.
What do we use it to build our own? Like who are we buying?
Hospitals like we used to have. Like we just need bricks. We have medical professionals.
Hospital. Who we purchasing steel from? Who we purchasing bricks from?
The steel company. I don't understand.
Who owns the steel company?
You don't think they'll want our cash?
There's a Black-owned steel company.
We can build industries, bro.
Money is, you talk about the economy is going to be booming. Whose economy though? Like,
they hate us because they're Black, but they victimize us because we're poor. They can't. If we have money, they can't victimize us.
We're poor because we don't own anything. Like,
what's the more important commodity than land? Because like people go to war.
You want to go on a reservation? Do they put you on a reservation? That's not reparations.
The more important thing than money or land is sovereignty, and Alex. But to kind of like circle back to Q's original question, like why is Pan African important? Like, I think just getting cash alone is pretty much just going to exacerbate the problem that already exists. I'm not against it, but like if you really think about this as logical conclusion, you're asking money from your oppressors to essentially infuse it back into their economy to essentially help them again. So at the end of the day, I think that's why Pan Africanism is important, because if we look at what happened to like the victims of the Holocaust, I don't want to say the name because I don't want to mess up y'all monetization.
I think Trey called them small hats or something like that.
But like just from a humanist
University
perspective,
of Miami.
From a universal humanist perspective, like they didn't just get, I mean, to this day Germany is still paying them, but they also have their own homeland. But like that's
you
what
already
I'm saying.
said it though. They're getting paid though. So if we're not getting paid, then it's not.
But like that's what I'm saying.
That
like,
land more important.
That's what I'm saying.
You can buy land with cash.
But like not necessarily. That's why I'm saying the Pan African part is important, because money without a sovereign place to set up your own identity outside of this infrastructure and system, it's kind of a wasted opportunity.
This is why the devil is so important. This is why the devil is so important, and why all of us just need to locate in the South. And if we all move to the South, we can take over one of these sovereign states and make it our own. We can do that. Like I think that's
Israel.
I don't know that's.
Let me hop in really quickly. I think that if we're looking at like end goal solutions, somebody just said it was a question that I had and I want to kind of ask, or it was going to be a wrap up question, but I guess we kind of like have led into it. And Tara's on stage. No, the answer is no. There is no consensus to what reparations should be. That's why we kind of like debating it right now. But someone said Israel, and to me, when I was thinking about like the idea of Pan Africanism and what the end result of that would end up being? Would it end up being a sovereign state, i.e., like how the Jews from Europe and all over the world came together, and whether you want to call it like the Zionist movement, XYZ, to make Israel to where they had their own safe space, quote unquote, to where they felt that that was theirs. Is that the end goal of like the Pan African movement?
They have Liberia, which we don't even talk about. Black folks love to talk about colonization and displacement, but Liberia is what you're talking about, in my opinion. That's like what you just said. Like, we had it.
Okay.
And you can see what Liberia is today, respectfully.
So that's not the end goal of like the Pan African thing, is to have all black people in a sovereign space in which
Can I interject? Can I interject?
On that Liberia point is Israel has America financing them still. America created Liberia and kind of left it. It's financing Israel, still sending them money, still are uplifting them to be a functional country above.
Who would help us if we were sovereign outside of the United States?
I guess essentially we're still
Pan Africans. The Pan Africans
That's why
would be
Pan
the only
Africanism is
country.
important.
Hey, can I interject?
Yeah, let Johnny talk. My bad.
Yeah. I think there's a distinct difference if we're talking about like Liberia and like here, because like this is the land that's owed to us. You know, like our like we got blood, sweat, and tears on this land. Like we could go to another country and get in a place of land, but like I think the American South, if we talk about South Carolina, Georgia, specifically like Charleston and like places like New Orleans, that's like where we came into this country. We should have sovereignty in those lands. And I'm glad y'all brought it up as far as the sovereignty thing. That's the one thing I've always been preaching. I think that's the difference between some of the Caribbean slaves and the slaves other places is we don't have our sovereignty. And until we get that, until they repay us in some form of reparations, our sovereignty, we can't come and have an equal conversation with the rest of the Africans who have their sovereignty. And I think to me that's very important when we talk about reparations or even have these conversations, because I feel like Black Americans have been like it are the child left behind, where a lot of people, a lot of other Africans, they are getting their reparations already. If you look at Africa, they're taking the land back from the colonizers. It's a big movement over there in Africa, but over here in America, they not wanting to give us nothing. And I guess that's my only point.
My only thing about what's going on in Africa is that it is a lot of oppression on that continent. Like, I don't know, like,
but what I'm saying is they're trying to fight it's renationalization. They're nationalizing a lot of that land that's owned by white corporations. They're nationalizing that land and giving it back to the Black countries that own it.
I think it's important for us to kind of highlight, like, not to be that person, but we're all kind of having this conversation from the comfort of our own homes on, really fancy laptops, I'm assuming. We need to understand we're in a really privileged, we're in a really,
my shit ain't that fancy. I'm freezing up.
But like what I'm saying is, like, we're in really privileged positions and we're kind of like poo-pooing at the developing world. But like the reason why we're able to live the way we're living is because someone has to suffer. So I don't think it's really fair to like, oh, this, that. But like we as people who live in this country kind of benefit from the oppression and pretty much the exploitation of brown people all around the world who look like us, who don't live here. So I think it's kind of somewhat short-sighted to think that like through some sheer force of will that we are where we are in this continent, because, and that's including Canada, that's including the brothers who migrate to Mexico once they had enough of here, and then people live here. Like it really is kind of a privileged position to just think that like, oh no, like y'all need to fix your own shit. Like we're kind of fucking up this shit as we speak right now in our air-conditioned rooms. But that's all I got.
Bro, I prefer we not talk about Africa at all, honestly. The only reason
I'm talking about the whole developing world.
But I mean, like, I prefer not talk about anybody outside of America that's black. I'm talking about black people here in our fight with the government. And the only reason Africans came up is because they're over here. If they were over there in Africa, nobody would say a word about them. We're not like really thinking about them like that until they come over here and get Juneteenth scholarships that we fought for. And they also get Caribbean scholarships too. And we're like, come on, y'all, like, how are y'all helping us if y'all just benefiting from what we fought for and offering us to go back to where you came from? Like, bro, that's not.
But like
that's the thing. Came up.
But that's the thing, Trey. Like you see how you just did that. Like, you're upset at you're upset at the infrastructure that allows this stuff to happen, but you're also wanting them to rectify and remedy an issue that you're having. Like, if a black person from the continent of Africa or from the Caribbean or anywhere that is outside of the jurisdiction that is FBA approved get something, you're upset that they get it, and the people that give it to them are the same people that you're demanding reparations from. So
no,
like,
it's
that's
the HBCUs, bro. It's us. I'm sick of the people that are in charge, our elders that allow this, that instead of when they allow civil rights to not be for just black people.
But that's what I'm saying, Trey. Like, you live in a country where they have federal laws, and that's why, Chad and Brad and Samantha can go to HBCU because you legally cannot discriminate them from going there. So like, you're getting upset at people following the law.
I'm not upset with them, bro. I think it's a
Trey, just to make sure, so Trey, you're not fucking with the HBCUs either.
I would say I'm not. I would say I'm not messing with the FBCUs, but I do. I wouldn't. They're also not the mecca that people make it seem to be. Like, there's a lot of.
Oh man.
Like, Kamala Harris went to an HBCU and she pledged. And what has she done for black people?
That's a one exception, but bro,
there's a lot of people. Like, what is right now? It's just a lot of dancing.
This nigga not froze either, right? He actually standing still, right? Yeah, like, it's just.
You talking about the exceptions. I'm not no Kamala Harris fan either, but she's also.
But you're also speaking ill about immigrations and black people and saying that we love criminals and stuff like that too.
Kamala Harris is an exception. Like, she's not a representative of all HBCUs.
To be fair, Jamaicans don't claim her either. So
yeah, she's a vice president. What vice president really does anything? But you also got Thurgood Marshall. You also have influential. You talk about Black history earlier, and the Black history that we need to uplift and uphold. And a lot of these Black people came through HBCUs.
Let's keep it focused on the present, though. I get what you're saying. There's a lot of stuff in the past, but presently, we got Kamala Harris and Sandra.
Oh, you don't think that HBCUs are producing anything?
Yeah, this is a whole other conversation here.
Yeah, we don't. I can bring some receipts for that too, but that is a kind of different topic.
So you just think we should just go to predominantly white institutions only? Is that what you're saying?
I think we need to clean house in our HBCUs and make
one person is not representation of all 152.
Man, I see a lot of the stuff, man. Like I said, I can bring some receipts and everything now, and this is kind of like beside the point.
Cool. That's one person. Like, there's bad apples at white schools too.
Do you go to church?
Bro, there's problems with the church too.
Oh, I'm just asking because I was asking, do you go to church? Because you was complaining about the singing or the dancing. I was like, I think just black folks in general like the jiggy. Like,
I'm saying, like, that shouldn't be what you do all the time though. There should be like some consistency with that too. Like, they gave scholarships they have like African Takeover Day, and then they allowed a bunch of Ukrainians come over there. They have the Latinos kind of taking over a lot of the Greek fraternities. What we built for us is no longer. I think we need to clean house with a lot of these things.
But
and that's part of what the FBA is.
It for us though.
Like, federally, you cannot legalize segregation. Like,
I'm not saying but
yeah, never mind.
I'm not saying to legalize segregation or anything like that. I'm just saying being on code. And we have a lot of off-code behavior.
When you say on code, what do you mean by that?
They love that on code.
On code.
What's on code mean?
Man, I actually took some time and thought
that out. Mr. Code, nigga. Yeah, there we go.
I was ready. And John, you said we needed an episode like instead like black code, not like the original black codes they used to enslave us, but
These
like
the new black codes.
like the new black codes. When I
Yeah,
say
like
on
guy
code,
code, we could have like black code. Like, and we could just like list, like we figure out what the code is.
yeah, straight up. My bad. I'm gonna pause. I had a straight time. But basically, a quick example of it while I'm finding like a good definition is basically, did y'all see the Malcolm X movie where they arrested the brother from what for whatever reason it was police brutality, and everyone followed Malcolm X, and they were well dressed, and then they stood on their business, and then they got him out. Okay, the Million Man March. That's another example of being on code. All right, here it is. Like on code is putting your race first, looking out for one another, and we don't need everyone, just a critical mass to do that. So like the Black Panthers were on code taking care of the community. Black people have to be on code when around other races.
So let me ask you this then: if by definition on code, that would be inclusive of non-FBAs, no?
Nah. I'm talking about our lineage to be on code, and also again, I have absolutely nothing wrong with anyone non-FBA who isn't standing in the way of our progress. There are plenty of great examples. And on top of that, I think that scholarships that we fought for foundational Black American is not segregation to keep it based on a lineage. They have scholarships for Native Americans as well. That's not segregation. It's only segregation when Black people try to do something for themselves. So I think on code is when you support Black businesses, and like the Montgomery bus boycott, that was on code. When Tupac hopped out the whip to neutralize that undercover race soldier committing police brutality.
Yo, I ain't gonna lie, that's one of them. That makes Pac a legend. I don't even like all of Pac's music, but that's the Pac story is crazy. I gotta admit.
But speaking of on code, like I think that's kind of going back to the whole Pan African, like conversation. Like if anything, we as like this generation, we're off code because you're talking about like listen to what you're saying when you talk about hold on listen to what I'm saying, Trey. If we're talking about Tupac and you brought that up as a good example, what about Asada Shakur when she busted them shots at them cops in New Jersey? Where did she go? Who was on code and kept her hidden and pretty much gave her amnesty? Cuba,
bro,
right?
I agree with you on
but
that.
Like that's what I'm saying.
Present day though, you're talking about
okay,
stuff
but Trey, you kind of ebb and flow. But that's what I'm saying. You ebb and flow out of like what's relevant to your points. Like we're supposed to remember our heritage. We're supposed to remember our history, and that's why it's a reason for ethnogenesis. But when it's inconvenient, like nah, man, that's old shit. I don't want to hear about that. So
that's
like,
not what I sound like.
Not really. That's a silly voice I make for everybody. As someone with a silly Kermit the Frog voice, I'm sorry. I appreciate it. I apologize. But like ultimately, what I'm saying is, if the end goal is, I don't think the end goal of getting reparations is to be rich. I think the end goal is to pretty much listen to what I'm saying. I think the end goal of getting reparations is to provide a better future for our descendants who look like us, to have a fair and equitable society to live in. And I don't think you're going to do that by yourself. I don't think we can do that by ourselves. And that's why, like, if you think about it, no, you can't, bro. Like
everything we did was by ourselves.
Not necessarily, but I hear what you're saying. Like, if you think about it, like, the one thing that everyone's complaining about with, like, oh, man, Ukraine, why are we giving money to Ukraine? That is a prime example of what it takes to survive on a national scale against your enemy. Like people in Ukraine, like it's a tiny, really small place, but they're putting up a fight against a big country like Russia with all the pretty much military power that they have that rivals us. And why can they do that? Because they made allies against the entire western side of the hemisphere. So how are we planning to do that by ourselves? That's all I'm saying.
Can I throw a wrench into what you just said? Because Russia, this is where Pan African gets. So from our perspective as Black Americans, some of America's biggest adversaries are the most invested in the continent of Africa and some of their biggest allies. When you talk about China and Russia and what they've done in the continent of Africa, what they provided for a lot of quote unquote Black people on that continent. Like I'm curious, like this is why it's like, it's what I'm saying. It's like this idea of like a Pan African. It sounds good, but like in reality, we're not on the same page fighting for the same things just because we all are black.
I was using Ukraine as an example, but yeah.
So I guess I want to kind of wrap the conversation up with the spirit of what got us to it. And we're kind of at a very pretty much similar spot to what got us to it, in which we're kind of talking about the black and the African divide, the diaspora divide. And yeah, I'd like to play a couple clips. And again, we can wrap it with the conversation that got us to it, like the idea if the African, like the resentment that some African Americans hold towards Africans is justified, and vice versa. If the resentment that some Africans may hold towards blacks is justified, and then kind of branching it with the olive. Well, that's an olive branch of what do we do from here to kind of mend these fences.
That man about to play a Charleston White clip.
Oh no, it's gonna get ignorant first, and then we'll kind of lighten it up. But this, I'm gonna play a Charleston. I'm gonna play a Trey clip, and I think it's a Fresh and Fit clip, maybe.
Not
just
Fresh
to kind of.
You're doing the whole gauntlet, man.
It's the ignorant gauntlet. My bad, y'all.
We came back over here and rescued one nigga since we left from Africa. Yeah, and Africans don't like us. Yeah, nigga, Africans don't fuck with us. They don't like us, and they stink. Yeah, ain't some stinky people. Yeah, niggas, fuck Africa. Yeah, nigga, they ain't our people. We niggas, slaves, the descendants of slaves. They would never call no nigga. The first group of Africans, only one generation. Now the first group came. They wasn't born into this shit. Me and your people was born into this, homie. They were born slaves. They birth certificates say nigga. They was born in Africa. They are not us. They know what tribe they come from. They had a language. Once they broke them from the language and we was born in these conditions. We ain't no Africans. We ain't no Hebrew. We nigga.
Oh my God. Bro, why you play this?
Don't speak the language. Figure it out. Go to college, get education.
Hey, like you
Why
said,
are
Candace
black
Owens.
Africans, right, from Africa doing way better than African Americans?
The experience of an African immigrant in the United States is way different than the experience of an African American.
This
They're
is
two
a white man
totally.
speaking
If you're an African immigrant, you might as well be white or European.
Oh yeah, that's
yes.
What are you talking about?
Just what part of that do you understand? If you're an African immigrant coming to the United States, your outcomes in life, the places that you live, the education you have, you're more on par with an upper class white person than you are with a person who's a descendant of
The
slaves.
biggest difference is the mindset. It's not the
No, it's not
circumstances,
the
not the
mindset.
environment.
It's the families that you come from. Somebody that comes from a family that's driven enough to get their children or themselves to move to the United States from Africa. This is a highly driven family. This is a lot different than somebody whose great-grandparents weren't allowed to buy a house
Highly
in the
driven?
city because they were redlined out by a bank in the United States.
Explain to me how immigrants can come here, don't speak the language.
All right, we got one last one.
Why is it immigrants are not stopping reparations?
My ancestors come from the Caribbean, and there were
Okay,
slaves in the
so then maybe
Caribbean,
it
and we
maybe you wouldn't
really-
qualify for this for the American reparations.
Well, here's the challenge. There are so many difficulties with trying to enact reparations, in part because the question is who gets them. Potentially, I could fall into that category. I honestly have called a pipe dream in the past, and I think that's what it is.
Well, it would be nice if there was an elegant, simple solution to all sorts of complicated problems. You're not actually talking about how to fix those problems if you're only talking about reparations. If we're only debating how we're going to parcel out responsibility for something that happened more than a century ago. And we're probably never going to do this. It's not clear to me why we're pursuing this thing.
Is it fair that there's no reparations, no restitution, nothing?
Should the Irish get reparations, by the way? Irish need not apply signs when they came here during the progressive era. I mean, how far do we want to take this down? Are we acknowledging that there are ugly spots in history? Because 60% of the world would be entitled to slave reparations if you wanted to play that game.
Well, here's a fact. Slavery ended 154 years ago. It's been a long, long time since we had slavery in this country. And you have people like my family. I'm black, but my family came to the United States in 1962. My parents are from Costa Rica. Do I get a check?
I did a couple of essay contests that I actually won.
I think y'all kind of get the gist of that one. Again, I do think that we understand that those are low-hanging fruit examples, but I kind of use that to kind of like show the idea that there is some resentment that exists across the diaspora on both sides. I'll ask I guess the simple question first to start it off. Do y'all think that there is some version of justified resentment for either side? Trey, I think that you'll be a good one to start this off.
Mute it.
I had to mute it because I was laughing with it. A broken clock is right twice a day, and I'll say that for Charleston White, and I'll also say that for that funny hair dude. He brought up some good points. Yeah, right, Destiny. I usually can't stand those fools, but I mean, bringing out the distinction. I don't disagree with his. I don't agree with his wording of the thing, but I get his sentiment of the issue. It's kind of like even y'all agree with it too. Like we're in it by ourselves. Like we can't depend on the diaspora to help us. So they never. I mean, so we need to get it on our own, and we have a different situation. I think.
Stay to the question. Though. Stay to the question.
Oh, the question. Okay.
Just like, is it justified?
So you said it's a low hanging fruit, and is it justified? I do think that was low hanging fruit, but when major
I know that was like the comments was low hanging fruit, but I was using those as a guise to ask the question, just to show the fact that resentment does exist. Is it justified? Do you believe that it's justified on either side?
Yes. Do I believe? I think it's rightfully justified. Do I think they speak for the majority of all people over here? I can't say that they speak for the majority, but I do think that the people that are against us having reparations know where to find people to speak out against it. And if you were to get a person that's a foundational Black American going there talking like that, they're going to get ostracized at the family reunion, all the other stuff. But if you bring somebody from a different community who also agrees with them, then they're the perfect. I don't want to say I don't want to make them sound like pawns early or anything like that, but they're the perfect weapon against us because it's a black. I have a Black person. They don't think you deserve reparations, so if a white person says it, then it doesn't have as much weight. So when you see them do that, I think them being weaponized against us is something that of course we take issue with that.
So you do feel that it is justified?
Very much
what you
so.
Think? Well, G's battery just died.
Dang.
Yeah, I'll be back.
I wouldn't say it's justified. I would say it's understandable. Our resentment stems from somewhere, and it's typically your own conditioning based on your life trajectory. It's based on your lack of understanding. Like I know for definitely for sure when it comes to Black reparations, I don't really want to hear from Africans. I don't want to hear from Costa Ricans. I don't want to hear from them when it comes from us. But I also am not going to exclude any relations with them because of it. But I would like them to respect our experience like I would respect theirs. I'm not going to go to South Africa and talk about apartheid. I'm not going to go to their different areas and tell them how they should feel about their experience. But I can respect it and I can build relations and see how can we connect, how can we help each other in that instance. When it comes to Africa, I don't think G's gone, but Africa is not a utopia. And when I speak on it, I don't want to speak as if all right, Africa is this utopia. Africa is this heaven that we should all run to. What I think is a great place to build relations. Huge. It's a continent. So some countries, they are corrupt leaders that have been influenced by CIAA, that are still controlled and conditioned by colonialistic and capitalistic powers and whatnot.
Not CIAA.
I meant CIA. That's CIAA.
I think you was doing that for YouTube.
I thought you were talking a shot at the HBCUs. My bad.
But what I'm saying is I understand it's not no utopia. It's not a utopia for people of color anywhere on Earth. Unfortunately, what I feel is our best chance at progression. It's either you are screaming in somebody's house, or you got your own house to scream in, and that got its problems too. But at least it's yours. At least you own it. At least you got more of a fighting chance. Which I feel when I go out there, So like I say, the resentment, it goes back to that misunderstanding with each other. When it comes to talking heads, I'm always weary because you don't know whose pocket people are in with when it comes to what agenda that they're pushing. You know, so you might be paid or swayed to speak a certain way. When it comes to like the Charleston Whites of the world, you know, in his perspective, he is a nigga. You know, I don't consider myself there. I kind of get his sentiments, but I don't limit myself to chattel slavery. I accept that I'm a descendant from it because I can trace it to it, but I also can trace beyond it as well. So it's like I feel like we need to open our mind on the whole thing and get more understanding. So it's not that resentment. Stop taking perspectives from one or two Africans on TV or people that we met in person. Have more conversations because I think in my experience, the more you talk to, the more you realize it's more people that's for us than against us. It's ignorance on each side, but the more you talk, you know, people come away with, damn, I didn't know that. I've had so many conversations in Senegal and Ghana in Nairobi with people, and we left like, damn, I didn't know y'all went through that. Damn, I know y'all experienced that. They only showed us this, you know. I thought y'all was all Rick Ross, and I thought y'all was all this, you know. So, and vice versa on this side, you know, people have limited knowledge on what they get from Africans. Oh, I had an African who was my nurse, and you know, she was uppity and she thought she was better. Like, and now they are viewing the whole continent based on these limited experiences. So, like, that resentment comes in through lack of understanding, just like resentment in any faction of our life. You know, it's a lack of understanding and it's hurt. You know, that people project.
So I guess I'll throw to Johnny. So with the maybe you feel
Hey,
like
can you repeat the question?
I got you. Do you believe that the resentment that exists between Black Americans and Africans is justified? And I'll one up it, kind of almost a piggy to what A Black just said. And do you believe that it's based off of hurt? Is it justified? And do you believe it's based off of hurt on either side?
I'm gonna start with the first one.
Okay.
I think it's definitely like justified. I mean, it's a misunderstanding. Like we just sat here and talked 2 hours about how we all kind of want the same things for Black people, but how we don't understand each other and we talking past each other. If you go back to, you know, the To Be Fair show on Sunday, you can see how people are able to talk past each other. I feel like this is maybe this is one of those instances where we all want the same thing. We all own we ain't
Needs and
on
wants.
here for like no like bullshit real because we don't have passion for it. So like we all kind of want the same thing for our people, but it's a misunderstanding. You can even go like if we talk about how diverse the continent of Africa is, but then we come over here to America and we just get the label as African American. That's definitely designed to create differences and schisms because if you know how diverse the continent of Africa is, if you just lump all these people together, of course there's going to be differences. Of course we're going to have different ways we look at each other. So I think like it's definitely understandable if we talking about like how we've came to this like intersection of we talking about FBA versus Pan Africanism and like or any like it's definitely understandable because white supremacy and colonialism is the same beast. It's just under different names. So of course it's understandable. We just have to understand.
And is it based off hurt?
For Black Americans, it is. That's why because like we haven't had those victories. You know, I feel like Black Americans, like the Haitians, France left Haiti and they gave them their country. You know, the minute it's a bunch of some of those Jamaica, you know,
And
Toussaint,
decimated it.
the Maroons, they left that land and they was able to take it over. So as far as like the Black Americans, we didn't have that liberation, but we're still
And
living under our oppressors.
let me ask you this, and I guess this probably
So it's
goes to
definitely
like
based off hurt because we still living under our oppressors.
and I'm kind of thinking through this as we're having the conversation, but I'll ask this to all, I guess, like I'll ask this to the panel. So when like statistics that are quoted often is like, say, Nigerians are one of like per capita like the more wealthiest groups of immigrants that come into the country. and that's often thrown in the face of Black Americans, almost to speak to like the idea that y'all can't get it right. Even these Africans can get it right. Does that ever make you feel any kind of way?
Well, I think you have to look into the. Yeah, you have to look into the context and the policies that are behind that. Like, if you are pretty much like, because like I had some friends who kind of were in the same similar program where, like, you have to think about it, like these are the top 1% of the folks from Ghana. Like, then or from Nigeria. Like, I want to dispel the notion that like this is just droves of people and they just pick them out of a bunch. Like, they pretty much like had to like fight the Kumite over there and then get over here. And then they have policies, like pretty much diplomatic policies where like, hey, for exchange of this, we'll have y'all go to Texas A&M or Texas University to get a doctorate's degree. And I think like, I don't know like how we are going to fault like a country for having, hey, like diplomatic relations from one state to another state, because no one does this for like when Asian folks come over here and they have the same arrangements that way. So I think it's not fair that, you know, Black people get compared to that, you know, arrangement, because of course, like if the majority of the people that get sent over here are the best of the best, top rated, graduated, like, you know, cum laude and all that stuff, like that's not the experience. Like it kind of goes back to the conversation I had with Rel that one time where, hey, like, we can't depend on exceptionalism to save the Black community. We kind of have to build something for the lowest common denominator so folks can kind of move and like, you know, one tide raises all ships, that kind of thing.
Nice.
I don't know. Whoever wants to kind of hop in.
I'll jump in because I think that like the piggyback here is so.
And I do want to hear you answer the questions as well.
All right, bet. Just want to emphasize that like getting to America from one of these nations is not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy. I've actually taken the consular class to adjudicate visas when my wife was in the foreign service, and I know for a fact how hard it is to try and get a green card when you are like from one of these countries and you're looking for a way out. And if you don't have resources, like he just mentioned, it is very difficult to get over here. And I think that's why we see these outliers of, especially from some of these nations that we're talking about. Oftentimes these immigrants will come over, they'll cash out everything that they have at home to seemingly give their next generation a better opportunity here. But back home, they were doctors. But then over here, they live in an apartment. Back home, they had land with multiple homes. And then over here, they're living, you know, very modestly. And so I do feel like that does play a big part. But in terms of is it hurt and is it justified? Were those the questions?
Yeah.
I think it's because of the propaganda. Ultimately, it's not because we're hurt. Is because of how we are portrayed outside of the United States through media and propaganda. And likewise, like we grew up watching TV, we have a certain vision of Black people who grow up in these developing nations too. And I have to just say, when I look at my life experiences, when I've been in my lowest of moments where I fell victim because I trusted someone, it was someone who looked like me. Now, when I look at opportunities, and this is crazy, it's like when I look at just who's helped me open a door here or there to take advantage of an opportunity, these people have never looked like me. And I don't know why this is the case. I went to HBCU. I've worked at Black businesses. Trust me, I don't bunny hop. I don't do none of that stuff. But the reality is that opportunities were not given or not even, I want to say given opportunities. I could not take advantage of opportunities in ways in certain spaces that I've been able to in others. And I don't know why.
So I guess, because I guess I'm kind of gray on like, can you circle that back into it? I think that's an interesting point. I'm trying to see how that
So when we talk about trusting people or just doing stuff because somebody's Black, I think we also need to
Does that lead to like so is that like a harbored resentment? But would that like be basically towards black people?
So when we talk about why it's so difficult to trust people, I think in our community, like we get betrayed. Like for whatever reason, we can't hold it down. I don't know if it's a on code, but like for whatever reason, when I gotta get a lawyer, I trusted a nigga I shouldn't have trusted. That's why I put this right here. You see what I'm saying? Like if I gotta get a lawyer, it was because I trusted a nigga I should have trusted. And I've just found things difficult in my community to build because it's always somebody closest to you to tear down the operation. It's in all the stories through history, all the organizations, Black Panther, Marcus Garvey, you name it. It's somebody on the inside is how things get taken down. So that makes me very paranoid to trust people. It's just from a pro-Black Pan-African thing is like, yeah, I want to be this way, but the reality is these like it'd be the people closest to you that will take you down. Point blank, period.
Gotcha. Trey, is it on code for G to get a white lawyer?
No, because that's one thing we're missing. Like we need an army of lawyers. Like one thing that Jewish people did.
It was a joke.
Hey, go holler at the Stanley Group.
My lawyers was Italian, baby, and they handled it well. I'll just say
I know some black lawyers. I know some lawyers. The Stanley Group, South Carolina. Go holler at the Stanley Group.
But we have a lot of crumps, like ambulance chasers, to try to get paid. What we need is like when Jewish people, when the small hats went through, one of the first things they did is they got an army of lawyers. No, I mean, I want to be like that, but that's important. Like you have to be able to work the government and be politically sophisticated. And if we don't have people that are civil rights attorneys to plead our case and to make legislation in our favor, then we're going to lose that battle. And politics are very important. Like politics is warfare without bloodshed. And, warfare is politics with bloodshed. So if we aren't able to compete politically, then we aren't going to be able to make moves. So I've heard people say that even with civil rights attorneys, they had to go get a small hat lawyer. And then they spoke up for them more than the black person would. And then that goes back to, isn't that what our HBCUs is supposed to be doing? But I mean, that's for another topic. But
that's something I said last week about like us being politically literate as far as like how this political game run. Like I spoke about that. I think I said financially literate, but I meant politically literate as far as like how this game operates in this country. If you're the small hats, as Trey would call them, they know how the game works. They know how the game works, not only in this country.
We gotta stop using that term, bro. That is crazy. Like, like I just gotta say that is a crazy term, bro. We like that. It's nasty. It's kind of nasty. I just gotta say it's a nasty term. It's
okay, maybe I shouldn't have said that.
The algorithm's not gonna like. It's good for the algorithm.
The algorithm ain't picked up on that one yet.
I just know it's nasty. I just gotta say it's nasty.
Well, that's what they get for
Hey, Black, it looks like you got something to say.
Allow me to say, what was the original question? Because I feel like I might have gotten.
Yeah, we've diverted multiple times. The original question was,
it's cool.
What is pretty much it was the video showing the resentment on both sides, whether it was from black people or from Africans. And the question was, is it justified? And I think I branched it also to just the idea, is it based off of hurt? And that's on either side, whether Black American or continental or just like within the diaspora in general. And I guess also if I was building it, me asking the idea of the comparison to like the succeeding immigrant groups that come in. Typically, when you hear most black people retort like an idea of like Africans not messing with them, it's like these maybe you might say like the elitist thoughts of like say like a Nigerian family that's coming in and that doesn't want their daughter or whoever to mess with blacks or looks at blacks as lazy XYZ, or it's the comparison in general to other immigrant groups that through which we probably all will agree, like there is beneficial things for immigrants that come into America that blacks don't get. But the comparison in itself is what it seems to me that a lot of blacks end up having and harboring resentment towards. Um, all of that.
I spoke on the first part. The second part with the immigrants, like basically, it's like, I mean, even you take Nigeria for instance. Nigeria, the most populous country in Africa, 250 million. So you got people, like you said, it's so hard to make it out of there. You know, I know people right now that's been trying to get visas for over 2 years. So when they make it through that, they make it over here. It's like
it's a
that
certain mindset.
Yeah, that's mindset, and then their family structure is different. So they're worried about their kids being corrupted by American thinking, Western philosophy. So naturally, you want to keep it in the family, but that resentment really is not nothing new to our community. We get that resentment from older generations who kind of project the same thing towards us. It was like, I had it much harder than you. You have all of this at your foothold that we work for, and you can't make it happen. And it's kind of what some of them say when they come over here. It's like, we're coming from what some would say third world conditions. Not all Nigerians are all Africans, because they'll tell them, you coming over here, they were already probably living good over there 8 times out of 10, so they're not coming from huts and shanty towns and slums. Like you say, a lot of them are coming from, you see some of the cribs and the compounds and ways people are living over there. They
Do
live
you
as
think
nice.
that do you think that our generation has resentment towards Africans?
I think we have resentment in general. We are a projecting generation. We are easily offended, and we are always looking for somebody or something to blame. So whether it's white people, whether it's Africans, whether it's old people and the elders, whoever we can blame for our shortcomings and why we're not where we are, that's what our generation is going to do. We're going to hop on Twitter, we're going to have these debates, and we're going to blame and point fingers all day, while these people are coming from backgrounds where they didn't have the internet, older people, Africans in some cases, so they are kind of with a different mindset of work, of perseverance, of you already got it easy. Like we mentioned earlier, we're all in a privileged position sitting here on our phones. Our lights ain't went out once. We don't even think about the stuff that people deal with. We all got electricity right now. We all have Wi-Fi right now. So when they coming from those circumstances, and then they still see people complaining here, then I won't say they look down, but they have a certain, like, what's wrong with y'all niggas? Like, what do you mean you can't make it? What do you mean we taking something from you? And we're like less than an inkling percentage of immigration here. Like, we're not taking nothing from you that you couldn't get yourself. You're not working hard. I work at a college right now, HBCU. You know who's all excelling? The African students. They're killing shit. The Caribbean students are killing shit because they coming from backgrounds where they gotta get it. Or I know where I'm gonna go back to. I'm not going back to that. Whereas niggas like, I go to college, maybe not. We float through stuff and we make excuses and then we point blame instead of holding ourselves accountable for, like, Trey has been talking about all the stuff that we built, all the stuff that we fought for. A lot of our generation, I won't say our generation, we're a little older, but I'm in the higher education space. I see these students. A lot of them are lazy as fuck. A lot of them are entitled as fuck. And they have everything in their hand. They have 2 phones. They have a car. They have all of the things, and they still feel like they can't make nothing happen because they just expect things to come to them. Then my students from Zimbabwe, from all these other places, they making straight A's. They doing tech. They doing all of this stuff. You sit down and talk to them or see where they come from. They come from crazy conditions. Like, man, I gotta make it. Like, my family,
Black,
stuff like that. I gotta make it happen.
Hey, Tara, we might end off on your question. Hey,
can I ask him a question real quick?
Yeah.
Before that, I want let's finish this question off with Alex, and then remember your question. Alex has an
Black,
he
I'm
has
gonna
an
come
answer.
back to you. I'm gonna come back to you, Black. I got a question.
But yeah, so I guess I'll kind of like cater it a little bit more closely to you, Alex. So as a descendant of a West Indies like family,
yeah.
Do you hear resentment, and do you feel, if you do you feel it's justified, or like if you don't, then you can explain through that.
Like resentment from like
Like them
my side.
towards like from them towards Black Americans.
I think this conversation can really vary from person to person. I like I said, like I wouldn't want to hold the entire group accountable for the very loud vocal minority. And like the clip that you showed with like it was like it was kind of embarrassing to kind of see like Caribbean American, Jamaican, Kenyan saying all this crazy stuff about reparations. But like I think we as a group of people need to be careful about propaganda because like you could just as easily got a clip compilation of Ben Carson, Herman Cain, Condoleezza Rice, Tim Scott, like all of them saying the same exact thing.
In North Carolina he wilding right now.
Yeah, but like you could get the same compilation of them saying the same exact things, and what does that mean now? Should we all kind of like band together and hey, Black conservatives, y'all crazy? Like you don't get to sit at the table to talk about what we're talking about. No one does that. Like no one does that. No one says that. Like hey, like you can say whatever you want to say whenever you're a Black American with no, I guess, direct immediate ties to the continent or the Caribbean, but whenever you're I don't know, like someone with more immediate ancestry in the West Indies like me. There they go again. There they go again, hating on us. Like I think that needs to kind of be. I think we need to be aware of how propaganda works and why are they saying? Why are they trying to pit us against each other? And to kind of go to Charleston White, what we were saying, like we don't speak African. That's not true. We all speak African. We speak African and like our speech patterns, the way all of us talk here, like that is a tie over from how we used to speak in Africa. There are certain groups of the Caribbean community where they like there's words that we say that are pretty much like tied back to how they used to say like in the Ashanti tribe and Ghana and Nigeria. And fast forward to like in America, you got Geechees, you got Gullah, you got Creole. You got all these groups of Black people that have held on to their African traditions and maintain it. So, like, I don't think it's accurate to say that Africans, like African Americans or FBAs or any of that, like, there is no influence from our past. And I think that's kind of the bittersweet thing. Like, we don't have any real tangible connections to our ancestry all the way back then. But that's a beautiful thing. We can create something new in this new world that we all can thrive and build on. And I really hate that a lot of the time these conversations kind of descend into like anecdotes of like, well, when I was in the 5th grade, they called me this. And, when I was trying to get a job, a brother said this to me. Like, I think we need to get past that and kind of figure out how we're going to move together. Because a lot of, this is my last point, but a lot of what I hear from Trey and a lot of what I hear from FBA and ADOS people, like, they just want to be supported. They want to feel loved and embraced, and I think it's about time that we kind of start building those bridges instead of anything. Like I don't want to get in the way of any reparations. I don't want to get in the way of anyone's identity, and I think we can do that without pitting each other against each other. But yeah, that's all I got.
That's fine. So Johnny, you remember your question for A Black, and after that, we can pretty much do a minute 30 each, just kind of rapping and giving thoughts on what we can move from this conversation.
Well, yeah. No, I honestly think my question kind of leads to wrapping it up and moving towards a different space. But my question was,
so we can, go ahead.
Well, yeah, my question for A Black and just anybody like because just him specifically because I heard him talking about like the difference between like the drive you've seen and like maybe immigrants from Africa and the drive you might see from like Black people that are born here in America. And it like to me, I think that's a cultural difference. I think like culturally, Black people in America don't necessarily there's something that prevents us from having that same drive, whether it's white, like we can say it's white supremacy, but like there's something where these immigrants are coming and they're like A Black just said it, they're performing better than us.
The same drive exists. I just don't think that it gets noticed because
but why are they performing better than us?
I don't think it's. I think that's like anecdotal.
Just said it. He said he see the Nigerian.
But it's anecdotal at best. Like if you think about it, like Johnny, like
I'm asking A Black, what does he think? That's why I was asking A Black, what does he think the difference is?
I'm muted.
You okay with them calling us cicadas and cotton pickers though in the chat?
Oh
though,
wait,
so I
let's
might
not
address
do that.
that.
We'll get to that
My
later.
question was for A Black because he had a.
Comfort breeds complacency, man. So I know what Alex is getting at. Of course, there's exceptions in the Black community where we are driven, we are focused. I'm not to say that, but as a whole, we can look around when we see that small percentage that comes here, because it's still a very small percentage of Africans that come here. They usually are their best of the best. They usually are their smartest and their most focused. So they're coming from places where they are more lodged into discomfort, which makes them to focus and progress more to not return back to that. What we've been inundated with is comfort, with pleasantry, with is amenities, with all of these things that we get, and it takes away our drive. You know, we have porn, we have sports, we have FanDuel, we have so many distractions that make us as a whole reality shows, social media, things that a lot of other people don't have the comfort to
cultural
sit
thing. They're
and
cultural
roll
things,
over
though.
all day. We are constantly distracted as a people, and its focus and discipline has become almost like superpowers for us right now, because a lot of people can't master that. They can't apply that. Like, there are always exceptions. We be that, who knows? But I'm just saying, from the space that I work in, from K through 5 to college, I've seen this progression. My mom, who works at another college, we had this conversation like, what is going on with these kids? They are lazy. They aren't driven. They are in corners with everything, and they are being outperformed by people that are coming from outside. And my answer to that is just comfort.
But that comfort comes culturally, right? That's a cultural thing. Like it comes from Black American. It's not Nigerian culture. It's not culture that comes from the Caribbeans. It's a Black American culture that creates that comfort. Am I right or
let
am
me
I
just
wrong?
let me just go ahead and eliminate this all. Like, I think A Black he gets to see it from a very, like, he sees the end result. Like, you came over here, you're in college now, but like, as someone who grew up in a predominantly Black island like the Virgin Islands, which is an American territory, I'm telling you, like, like, y'all don't get to see the knuckleheads who get to stay back and like, hey man, I'm cool, shit, I'm happy. Like, no one gets to see, like, no one gets to see the knuckleheads who never leave. No one gets to see the knuckleheads who just stay down there. So
I thought we were talking about the immigrants and like.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like to Johnny's point, like, it's not a culture thing. Like, you are literally seeing the exception, and then what I was trying to tell you, like, there are exceptions in who are born, raised, and homegrown right in your backyard who live here, but no one gets they don't get recognition because, honestly, I hate to say it, like, in a sea of Black people, like, no one's like, oh, that's Johnny. No, it's like, oh, that's Sambuba food, like, with the weird accent. Oh, that's what's his name? That's Neville with the Jamaican accent. Look at him doing his classwork. But when you're Black and you're here and you're doing what you're supposed to do, I hate to say it, people are kind of like, all right, move along. All right. You know, like, it's just a part of, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, we cannot depend on exceptionalism because exceptionalism isn't going to save a group of people. It's going to save you. It can save me. But like, when you see like, I think that's why it's really important for us to kind of get away from this, you know. But yeah.
Hey Alex, I just asked the question. My
bad.
Appreciate it, man.
Hey Black,
I had one more point. Like, and I think it's important to kind of, in the grand scheme of like supremacy and global white supremacy, you have to allow for the top 10% to leave, because I don't think anybody wants to contend with the issues of not letting, and that goes everywhere. Here, someone in Ghana, someone in Haiti, like, if you let them people stay back there and you don't give them an out, you know what those people tend to do? They turn into your next Malcolm X. They turn into your next, Medgar Evans. They turn into your next Assata Shakur. So you have to let those people out. So I think that's why Pan Africanism is important, because there's always that release valve for like, nah, these goddamn Nigerians getting a little bit too smart. And the next thing you know, they're going to turn into somebody that's going to be a problem that we have to contend with. And the same thing with the ADOS and FBA community. I think they will put all these trinkets in our face and want to like, I'd rather you be a doctor. I'd rather you be a software developer at my company
then be the next revolutionary. So that's all I have to say.
More shit, Alex. I fuck with it. I fuck
No,
with
that,
that.
that was a good wrap up. Trey, I guess I'll toss to you first for the wrap up. Minute 30.
All right, bet. So there are plenty of Black entrepreneurs and Black blue collar workers that you may not see. So if you're just talking about the people in the colleges, there are plenty of Black people that don't go to college that are also very successful. And I also ask, when people talk about the success of immigrants, like why that doesn't necessarily translate where they came from to where they had to flee. Because if they were so much like better than us and more driven, then you would think that they would be able to build that up. And also, as far as Pan Africanism goes, isn't it bad for Nigeria if their best and brightest leave instead of staying there to work the hospitals there and help the people there and build it up?
The same happening here too.
It's not really happening here. We're not really flocking
It is
out.
happening here.
Black Americans are not really flocking out.
China, the
Yes,
best
they
and
are.
brightest Chinese people leave.
The tech
The best
community,
and
yes,
brightest
they are. Like
any
they're going to
country leave.
Italy, they're going to Portugal, they're going to England, they're going to Canada. Like, yes, like if you
the people that are traveling are the best and brightest of
and
us.
engineers. I know so many over here, and they have no desire to go to Africa. Over there, the reason a lot of them get that degree is because they want to leave. That's their thought. I had a video I was going to play where they had an interview with a line of doctors, and every single doctor said they wanted to go abroad to the West because they have better pay there, and they also have, they say they have more opportunities. So if everyone's leaving to find better opportunities instead of build better opportunities, then the next man doesn't have an opportunity. And so I think it's Pan Africanism needs
a gun in there.
But Trey, you need to look at it in its proper context. Like, we don't live in this fantasy world where America only get American job. Like, you live in a global capitalism economy. You, me, the white person up the street, the Chinese guy down the street, you're all competing for the same global jobs. With AI, with the advent of all this technology, I would be surprised if my son and my daughter get jobs in America. They're probably going to have to go abroad somewhere. That's the way things are going.
I feel like you're kind of gaslighting, bro.
Let me hop in. Trey, you got like 30 seconds left. I know they derailed you. So
I can't table some of my time from that.
That's why I said they derailed
Hey, bro,
you.
we at 2:45, man. We get 3 hours.
Yeah.
Oh shit! All right. My bad. I'm gonna just wrap it up real quick.
Yeah.
A little bit of gaslighting as far as saying that Black people are really going out of the way to seek other places. I know a lot of Black people. Most of the people I went to school with, I can't tell you one person I went to school with that has a degree that's trying to move abroad. So you may know a few, and there's always an exception to a rule, but that doesn't count. And just to real quick close it out, I think I do want Pan Africanism to work. But I think in order for that to happen, we would need for the people in Africa they would need to free themselves of the domination by foreigners, free themselves from corrupt governments, right. They would need to build their resource-rich homelands to become a global partner to FBAs and other lineages within the diaspora. Pan-Africanism needs to be apparent in the motherland as much as it's been apparent in America for FBAs to benefit at all from that. Pan-Africanism cannot only be in America. Otherwise, there's no such thing as Pan-Africanism.
Got you. Alex, you got a minute 30 on the clock.
I guess to close out, I guess like my perspective that kind of really didn't get represented tonight. I'm more of a humanist. I'm more of a, hey, like we all in this together by class. And I think they kind of divide us by race. And I think this conversation kind of highlights they divide us by race and then by ethnicity even further. And it's somewhat disappointing and somewhat upset. And I don't think that we're moving in the legacy of, like legends like Fred Hampton. So, I think at the end of the day, I think Black liberation is the same thing as just building an equitable society altogether. And I really hope that we can have more conversations like this because, to be honest, I was kind of nervous. Like, I didn't know what I was walking into. I thought it was going to be like a African booty scratcher fest or like this and that. But like, I'm really proud of like what we were able to do. It kind of got out of hand a few times, but for the most part, I really appreciate the opinions that I got here tonight. And I learned something new. I didn't really know about Liberia, and I'm going to be looking into that more. But yeah, like I'm interested to see where this conversation goes. I think one thing that I kind of think there's a conflict with is like the whole contracting and expanding of the definition what FBA is and ADOS, what ADOS means, to some extent. I think we need to kind of dive into that a little bit more, because I think the definition kind of contracts and expands when expedient. But yeah, I'm interested to see where this conversation will go if we just focus in on the Native American aspect of things, and whether or not Black people are African or Native American, and who do we have more allegiance to. But yeah, beautiful conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Hey, Black.
Yeah, for me, man, Africa for the Africans, man. I'm about everything for us. I feel like we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I can acknowledge Black history. I can acknowledge African history. I can want reparations for Black Americans and only Black Americans, and I can also build relations internationally. You know, it's, I know we kind of started off with FBA and ADO, or whatever. When labels and new things like that for me are, you know, new ways to kind of divide people. When I look at the people behind things, I'm always weary of like their motivations. Like I talked earlier about Tariq Nasheed, Yvette Carnell, those, like, you know, these so-called leaders, not really leading much to me, but the vision. I think foundationally the idea and the intent is good, but I do think it has devolved into anti-Blackness, into anti-Africanness, into ways for people to kind of shit on each other and to shit on Africans. As much as people kind of try to say that's not what it's about, I think we hear a lot of tropes still throughout the night that are kind of rooted in ignorance, and it can't be nothing but ignorance when you don't go anywhere, when you don't have extensive relations with people
30 seconds.
to learn more about them. So, like I say, we were hurt by the same people that the rest of the diaspora was hurt by, whether it's it's all white supremacy. White supremacy is Thanos. The diaspora is the Avengers. We all got different powers on how we can help each other come together and defeat this. But to think we go do it by ourselves, for ourselves, without international relations, to me is like limiting our true power of coming together and really attacking this thing head on and getting benefits for everybody. But that's my piece.
Johnny.
Nah, I'm like I say, hey, appreciate everybody coming through. This is a beautiful conversation. We went, you know, we swung. We was on this side and that side, but I feel like we all had a common goal. I think we might not have accomplished it, but I think we all have some understanding of where everybody comes from. Like, we might not understand the whole the 100% the FBA shit. We might not understand the whole Pan African shit, but we understand that we are all a people that's under oppression, under one system or another. And I just think, like, you know, we have come together with that empathy towards each other. It's a beautiful future. I think we're also getting towards the accountability, and we're understanding some of the things that we might have to do as Black Americans. Some of the systems they're fighting against as the South American or the countries in the islands. But like I say, the totality of this discussion, like I say, I learned some stuff. There's a lot of things I ain't know necessarily about the islands or about the African countries from my perspective that I've learned. And, you know, I think we all got to work together. I think the
30
struggle for Black Americans have to be, you know, uniquely supported, but I don't think we can do that without all the other, you know, people that look like us in the world. And that's my only goal. I hope we all push it. I let a conversation, let her, you know, let her expand on it more next week. Love y'all boys.
G.
Man, I just want to say, where else are you going to hear a group of Black men using words like ethnogenesis in this motherfucker, man? on. And that's just fire alone. And this ain't even Stephen A. Smith, but shout out to Winston-Salem State University and other HBCUs in the fold. What I want to say, man, getting out of here is that, like, I agree with a lot of the talking points. I think that more than one thing can be true. I think that we need to have something figured out for, if we're not calling it FBA, African descendants, something needs to be figured out there where it gets acknowledged, but it can't be isolated. It needs to be interconnected with the greater community, and it needs to have an international plan as a piece of it. So I agree with all those pieces. And I also think that it's important to connect with those pieces so that we can all, we've all been oppressed by a greater power in these systems. It's like, yeah, we need to create our own systems. And I think if we really connect, then we can create some new system that hasn't existed in our modern era. And that's the push we need. We need to be thinking about things that haven't been done yet, things that seem impossible almost to really answer this question. Yeah. And that's how I feel we should be moving forward and really focusing on how to build our own systems as a greater community where more than one thing can be true at the same time.
No, for sure. And I guess I'll say that, yeah, like one, I just enjoy the unpacks just because I think at the root of it and what it's growing into is just a space where we get the opportunity to show that Black thought is not a monolith. And even within that, we can also agree, disagree without it like resulting into like ad hominems and epithets and shit like that. And just being able to like have a space where we can really discuss ideas in general. Again, like I said, I love the conversation because me personally, I'm on the fence, but I do think that FBA and Pan Africanism doesn't have to be like a mutually exclusive like thing. And there's ideas and concepts within both of them that I think it's probably essential for all of us to adapt for if we're actually looking for what the progression of Black people in general looks like on this continent and on Africa. How we, again, like that's my personal opinion. Yeah, like I know that for me, one of the things I did want to make sure that we did touch, and we kind of hit it a little bit, is the idea of like just addressing the resentment, even though it might feel kind of like a low-hanging fruit like space. But as I sat and I did like the little bit of research that I was doing, I could tell that there was a feeling of hurt that did exist on both sides. And the ability to kind of like sit and talk through and figure that out is probably going to be one of the things that, even though it might end up being like a really ugly thing in an uncomfortable conversation on both sides, where there's some accountability on both sides, is probably necessary to actually have like the real growth because of, like we could put a lot of like different establishments and supremacies and different things like that are like behind what it is and guise of it. But until we break down that actual wall that we tend to seem to have, especially when we get to the height of these conversations, I think that, like we won't have any progression. And yeah, like I said, so I do think that actually the underlining resentment piece is also really as important as whether we get into like the reparations conversation, whether we get into what like community within the diaspora really looks like. Because to be a community, we have to find a way to effectively work together and look at each other as an actual, like, valuable human being. But that's my piece. Again, this has been Unpacked. This has been another fire episode. I appreciate the panel. It's G, it's Trey, we got Alex, it's A Black, it's Johnny. Again, another great episode. And that's it. Yeah, I feel like everybody kind of, well, we can do a quick round the horn if anybody want to shout out your socials or whatever you have going.
We got less than 60 seconds.
Oh yeah, Nat. All right, X that. We'll tag everybody below. And yeah, again, Peace, love, everybody. Good shit.
To be fair, so 4:30.
4:30.
Ha.
There we go.
Shut your shit out, G.
Y'all already know what it is. Nah, man, fuck that. G Shit Podcast, family, friends, finances, freedom, and future. Fuck everything else. Ha.
We out.